responsible elected officials.
Juliette Kayyem on re-escalation in the war in Gaza, Trump's delayed Putin call, and we'll get Juliette's reaction to employees at 2 Houston area clinics arrested for allegedly providing abortions, the first such case since the state enacted near total anti-abortion laws. All that ahead on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump is speaking now on the phone with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. They're likely discussing Trump's call yesterday with Russian President Vladimir Putin. This comes as Trump has canceled a U.S.-funded project to gather evidence of Russian war crimes in Ukraine. NPR's Michelle Culliman reports.
The State Department confirms that it terminated a contract that supports the Ukraine Conflict Observatory. It did not explain why or respond to an allegation by a Democratic congressman who says he has reason to believe that some of the data from the program was permanently deleted. The Ohio Democrat Greg Landsman is sending a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio warning, quote, "This vital resource cannot be lost." As part of the contract, researchers at Yale University have been collecting evidence about tens of thousands of Ukrainian children abducted by Russia, evidence that's supposed to be used in war crimes trials. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
Thousands of people in Israel have been protesting as the Israeli government restarted the war with Hamas in Gaza. Airstrikes have killed at least 400 Palestinians this week. NPR's Kat Lonsdorf reports many Israelis want negotiations to proceed.
In central Tel Aviv, protesters flooded the streets, carrying posters with the faces of Israeli hostages still held by Hamas in Gaza, and calling for a deal to have them all released immediately. "If there's no deal, we will burn the country down," one group chanted, banging drums and marching. Polls show a majority of Israelis are against the end of the ceasefire and want talks to resume to get the remaining 59 hostages back. Many feel that Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is forsaking the hostages in Gaza by returning to war and instead yielding to far-right members of his government who have been pushing to defeat Hamas. Kat Lonsdorf, NPR News, Tel Aviv.
President Trump says his administration is appealing recent court decisions that have halted or reversed his executive actions. But as NPR's Tamara Keith reports, the president says he will follow court orders.
President Trump has been highly critical of federal judges who he says are trying to usurp his presidential powers. He's even suggested impeachment, drawing a rebuke from Supreme Court Chief Justice John Roberts. But when pressed by Laura Ingraham of Fox News, Trump said his administration would follow the orders.
I never did defy a court order.
And you wouldn't in the future?
No, you can't do that. However, we have bad judges. We have very bad judges. And these are judges that shouldn't be allowed. I think at a certain point, you have to start looking at what do you do when you have a rogue judge.
Trump said he is confident the Supreme Court will ultimately side with him. Tamara Keith, NPR News.
On Wall Street, the Dow is up more than 200 points. The Nasdaq is up more than 100. This is NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Officials at UMass Amherst have created a plan to divert money from other uses at the school to replace any federal research funds that would be cut by the Trump administration. The Telegram and Gazette reports that the Research Continuity Emergency Matching Fund, or RESCO, will use money that had been earmarked for maintenance or new investments to make up for the possibility of losing $150 million in research funding from federal grants and contracts that UMass gets every year. In Massachusetts, Governor Maura Healey has signed a proclamation naming today, March 19th, Edith Norse Rogers Day. Rogers was a social welfare volunteer and a politician who served as a Republican in the United States Congress. She was the first woman elected to Congress in Massachusetts, and until 2012, she was the longest-serving Congresswoman. In her 35 years in the House of Representatives, she was a powerful voice for veterans and sponsored legislation, including the Servicemen's Readjustment Act of of 1944, commonly known as the GI Bill. Also crafted the 1942 bill that created the Women's Army Auxiliary Corps and the 1943 bill that created Women's Army Corps, or WAC. Edith North Rogers was born on March 19, 1881. She died September 10, 1960. Boston Mayor Michelle Wu delivers her State of the City address tonight at the MGM Music Hall. The address begins at 7 p.m. You can hear it here live on 89.7 GBH News, or listen on your computer, your phone, and tell your smart speaker to play GBH Radio as well. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Eric and Wendy Schmidt through the Schmidt Family Foundation, working toward a healthy, resilient, secure world for all. On the web at theschmidt.org. This is NPR.
Here's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention Michelle Wu is giving her third State of the City address tonight. GBH News is going to carry it live with Tori Bedford. Used to be on our show, Jim. Remember Tori Bedford used to work for us years ago?
Now work with us. She didn't work for us.
She's risen in the ranks very dramatically. She's going to be the nighttime anchor.
She's on Marjorie's staff.
Chair. That's right. That's right. GBH News, of course, that's 89.7 on your dial.
That's right.
Hello.
One last thing, by the way. 12:55 today, when we usually do two more things, it's actually one more thing, and it's not us. We had this spectacular interview with Sonny Williams from the International Space Station a few months ago. Obviously, everybody, I hope, watched this beautiful landing yesterday. We're going to play part of that Sonny Williams interview at 12:55, so we hope you stick around for that. Before Mayor Wu gives her State of the City address tonight, we want to take the pulse of one of the more heated issues in the mayor's race, such as it is, and city politics overall, bike and bus lanes. Right next to us on Boylston Street, I assume you saw it, the bus and bike lanes have been completely torn up, as Wu told us would be happening. As part of a reconsideration of all road infrastructure, the city's taking a look at what's working, what isn't, and adjusting accordingly. Her opponent, Josh Kraft, wants to pause all bike lane construction. He says he's not against bike lanes and assess. We would love to talk to him about it, by the way, but he's so far not been able to commit to coming on the show. He's obviously too busy, despite repeated invitations. So the phone and text lines are open, 877-301-8970. Bike and bus lanes, and you. Is it the right approach to slow down and reevaluate all the bike and bus lanes in Boston? Or do you think Boston has been on the right track? More bus lanes, more bike lanes, fewer car trips. Is that the direction we should be going? And by the way, probably the most important question, what should the legal punishment be for a public radio host who ignores the law and openly admits to driving in bus lanes? Who would? Oh, that's Marjorie.
Okay.
That's right.
Okay.
877-301-8970. I don't even know the answer to this question. Where are you on the bike and bus lane thing?
Well, I think we need to have fewer cars in the city, less traffic in the city. The traffic in the city is awful. I mean, I'm all for bike lanes, and I think they should be separated so that bike people aren't, nervous wrecks about getting run over.
Physical barriers.
But they do cause problems. I mean, they do cause problems. People complain that if they're small business owners, that there's no place for the people that want to come to their stores to park. They take up, right behind us at GBH in Brighton on North Beacon Street. It used to be a 2-lane road. Now it's a 1-lane road, and the traffic is really backed up. So it's annoying to people. It makes the traffic sometimes worse because not enough people have decided to ride bikes. On the other hand, they're not going to ride bikes if they don't think they're going to be safe. So it's a complicated issue, Jim Browdy. It's a complicated issue.
Well, so let me summarize. Marjorie is coming down firmly on both sides of the issue.
Yeah.
And
where are you?
I'm not telling you where I am on this. I refuse to share with you.
Jim always asks me first, puts me on the spot, and then refuses to answer.
By the way, I mean, you can't quarrel, regardless of the motivation. You can't quarrel with re-examining what you're doing, taking a look at the stuff. And by the way, obviously Kraft says that it's because of him that she's doing this. In fact, I asked Mayor Wu in February, I think it was the same day she made the announcement, she was here about whether or not this was Kraft motivated. Here's me, and then here's the mayor. Would this have happened had there not been a challenger?
Yes, this has been in place for some time, and so we've had meetings even throughout 2024 with community members, and the lane was installed or finalized in July of 24, and so it's been multiple seasons now where we've seen how it's functioned.
That just got me aggravated. The numbers, that not for the reasons you think. 877-301-8970. For the bike lanes and the progress that's been made on this front and the bus lanes, or do you think it is appropriate to do a pause, as both Kraft is calling for and as the mayor? Wait, let me just say this.
Yep.
We see one more text from one of you saying, why are you barring Josh Kraft from your show? I am going to have a stroke. We have invited Josh Kraft on the show so many times, we cannot count that high. Marjorie and I have been on the air 26 years. Let me make an unequivocal statement. No candidate, Republican, Independent, or Democrat, has ever turned down an invitation to be on the show. Kraft apparently has no interest. It's not a criticism. He is free not to come on the show.
Well, I think he'll come eventually.
Well, what do you... This is ridiculous.
It is odd.
This is a fairly popular show. Mm-hmm. We talk about these issues. And if you care about communicating with the public, then maybe you just say yes and participate. But the point of that,
is very offended by this.
I am offended.
You called Josh Kraft, and Josh Kraft did not jump and say, how soon could I get there?
I have never called Josh Kraft. I haven't.
Jamie, our producer, calling.
No, but here's the point, by the way. Stop telling us that we are the problem.
Jim is a big deal newsman.
We are the
problem. We know.
Stop.
He's very upset.
Please stop telling us that we are the problem. Yeah. We have invited. We've been rejected.
He sees himself as the Walter Cronkite
I am so
of the Boston Public
unhappy
Radio.
that I brought it up. Well, maybe a little bit of Walter Cronkite. 877-301-8970.
I think we'll get to talk to him, Jim.
Oh, my God.
Don't worry about it.
You're not troubled by this?
I think he might have thought other people with the Walter Cronkite.
You know what he announced? He announced like a month and a half ago. What's going on with that?
I don't know.
He goes on low profile, 7 a.m. Sunday kind of shows. That's a problem if you want to be mayor of the city.
He might be rehearsing his shtick, before he comes face to face.
Okay, 877-301-8970. And by the way, if you're a voter in Boston, is the whole bus lane thing going to be part of the determinant
let me tell you
of who you vote for in this race?
Let me tell you something. I always take grief because I have driven in the bus lane.
You have.
You have to use common sense on the bus line. It's ridiculous to expect that when there is in Huntington Avenue, people that drive on Huntington Avenue know what I'm talking about. When there is no bus in sight anywhere in front or behind, you can see them coming from a long way away. The idea that everybody should be backed up in one lane of traffic, wasting gas, polluting everything else while there's no bus is ridiculous.
You know what it's called, by the way? I don't know if you're worried. You know what they're called? Bus lanes.
And you know what they are?
Bus lanes.
They are not commonsensical. That's where they're wrong. You can't drive in the bike lanes.
So you don't support bus lanes?
I support bus lanes when there are buses to drive in them.
It's either a bus lane or it's not a bus lane.
I don't support empty bus lanes while there's 50 cars lined up in Huntington Avenue.
And if Marjorie had a little Fiat, she'd drive in the bike lanes too if there are no bike lanes.
No, that's different. That's different because you could hit somebody on a bike, and that's a big difference.
By the way, the one thing we do totally agree upon, and we had this discussion.
Have to be separated.
When the mayor took down, what are they called, bollards kind of thing?
Bollards or flex poles.
And we talked to her about it, and it wasn't replaced by anything. She says
flex poles are her personal pet peeve, Jim.
Okay, and it should be replaced by a physical barrier. There's no question these cycle tracks. A bike lane that has like a cement thing or something like that is the only real safe way to do this, other than the brilliance. This happens out by us in Brighton or at Alston, where they park the cars off the sidewalk.
Yeah, they do that in Brookline, parts of Brookline too.
877-301-8970.
They had this Emerson College poll a while back.
Oh yeah,
read
that.
People.
That's important.
It says nearly half of registered Boston voters think there are too many bike lanes, while just 17% that say there are not enough bike lanes. Among undecided voters will be crucial in the mayor's race, as the Globe points out. An even higher proportion, 61%, say there are too many bike lanes. So that could be Josh.
Read the other part of that that's really important.
What?
98% of the people say Josh Kraft should never come on the show if he knows what he's doing.
Okay, Jim is offended.
Greg in Norwich, you were first on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show, Greg. Hi.
Hi there. I took my daughter into the hospital, and I drove Route 9 for like the first time in like 20 years. They have a bus lane on Route 9.
Yeah.
It's built for cars. It's not built for bikes. And I'm fine with the bike lanes, but Jim, no one's driving in the ice storm on their bike. So we put the bike lanes away for like, I don't know, the winter.
How do you do that?
How do you do that?
Good.
Well, they take all the people who are doing their outdoor dining, they take that out, and then they make them put it away in the North End. Why can't they do the same on these stupid bike lanes? The traffic is insane. It takes from Norwood to get to Cambridge regularly in a car 2 hours. And if the MBTA worked like, that guy you had on last week said much as it did.
He's otherwise known as the GM, that guy, Phil Lang. Go ahead, Greg. I'm sorry.
It doesn't work. When I was a kid, I used to take the train in, go to work.
Yeah.
I could get my dry cleaning when I got home.
Yeah.
It was tuned in. It does not work. And you guys give us no alternatives to do what Marjorie's doing.
You're with me, Greg, on the bus lane issue. Thank you.
Apparently,
You're a man of wisdom and common sense.
By the way, a lot of people do ride their bike. Who wrote that note? Is that Hannah who wrote that, I assume? Is that a Hannah note? One of our colleagues does ride in the winter. But the guy, Greg is right, even though he's a little upset with us, me. There are far fewer people riding in icy, snowy weather.
If I were a better American, I'd be taking the Green Line every day to the Boston Public Library and work here, and I don't. I drive my car, largely because I get free parking over there. It's a wonderful thing at the Lenox Hotel. It's great. But you see, everybody is driving in the bike lane when there's no bikes in the bike lane. You come down Beacon Street, you come down Commonwealth.
People driving in the bike lane?
Yes, they do. Beacon Street and Commonwealth Avenue. Yeah, they do. And it's dangerous. It is dangerous.
Well, you know what's happened to them? They should be stopped.
Well, they're not stopped,
ticketed.
Jim,
well,
because there probably aren't enough police officers to be out there doing it. But that's different. Bike lanes and bus lanes are two different things.
Pam in
anyway,
Westford.
let's go to Pam. Hi, Pam.
Hello, Pam.
Is that me? Hello?
Hi, Pam.
Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah.
Hi, hello.
Hello to you.
Oh, sorry. Quick comment. I'm calling to say that maybe they have already, but if Boston looked at examples like Vancouver that has figured out how to have bike lanes with specific bike maps, that you can go on certain roads and not others. Wouldn't be on Mass Ave, for instance. You're going on the back roads, and it works really well. And it's too terrifying on Mass Ave, but it can be done differently.
I don't remember, Pam. I've been to Vancouver, but not that recently. Part of the problem with Boston, if you're going to commit to bike lanes, there is going to be inconvenience because our roads are narrow and old, and we don't have like thoroughfares and that sort of thing. So that may be a good model. We'll ask the mayor about that next time she's here. Pam, thank you very much for the call.
Jim.
Someone who says they're Josh in Chestnut Hill says Jim's temper tantrum was really unappealing.
That's right.
By the way, he doesn't live in Chestnut Hill anymore.
Well, he used to. We have a lot of Josh texts. I'll read a few. Colleen Fowle. I recall you both whining that Liz Warren ducked your show for a long time for the first time she ran. So, Jim, why did you ban Josh Kraft? That's from Art in West Bridgewater. And then somebody else says, Josh Kraft will not make it in this town if he doesn't go on BPR with King Queen makers Marjorie and Jim. Are we King Queen makers?
That's not the point.
He's scared of you, Jim. Tough questions.
By the way, I'm sorry I brought this up because you're doing what you do with everything, taking it to an insane extreme. We sort of feel that this thing is like a public forum where people should come and make their case to the voters or the people.
I think it's true.
Oh my God!
If Josh Kraft does not enjoy an interview with the Inquisitor of all Inquisitors, Jim Browdy, Esquire,
it's really not
there's
the point.
no chance whatsoever.
That was not my point. I won't be bringing that up again.
All right, Joe,
at least when you're on the show.
Joe on the road, thank you for calling.
Thank you.
Hey, guys.
Someone just wrote, excuse me, before you start, an anonymous texter, Jim, I knew Walter Cronkite. I worked with Walter Cronkite. You are no Walter Cronkite.
Okay.
Joe,
there you go.
Sorry,
Joe,
on the
road.
Sorry, Joe.
Hey, guys. Long time.
How are you?
Hi.
Sorry.
Hi. I'm calling because I heard something that a previous caller said, which is that people don't use the bike lanes in the winter.
Yeah.
I just wanted to address that because that's blatantly wrong.
Please.
I actually work for Blue Bike. So,
you do? Great.
It's pretty much, it's pretty much an essential part of the city's infrastructure at this point. And what that person proposed is basically like saying we should take out the red line for a quarter of the year. This doesn't really make sense from a logistical perspective. So I'm totally in favor of extending the bike lanes.
Hey, Joe, as someone who obviously has an investment in this, I mean, you work for Blue Bike thing, there. What's your take on what Wu's doing, this reassessment thing? Should she just plow ahead, or is she doing the right thing, taking a look at what's going on?
I think the reassessment is the right approach. I think conceding to these outside opinions that don't really have a day-to-day role in the functionality of Boston is definitely the wrong move.
Joe, thank you much
It's
for
a tough
the call.
connection.
Yeah.
Okay, Marjorie in Brookline, this is a joke, I think. They should open the sidewalk for cars during rush hour.
I'm sure you'd like that. Are you amazed? I'm not, that bike lanes are such a big issue in this election. I would say it's symbolic, because I'm not sure that as many people are as affected by the reality of bike lanes as those who are saying that it's affecting their vote. It's a pretty serious issue, don't you think?
You mean the people are so upset about it, you're surprised?
No, I'm saying I'm not surprised that it takes on a symbolism, like many people in America whose home state has no problem with immigration, said that immigration was one of the key voting issues.
Well, parking,
it takes on a symbolic kind of power.
Parking is a huge issue for people. Parking, getting tickets, there's no place to park, I can't park for long enough. If I go to a garage, it costs me $40. I mean, I think driving issues in general, because, everybody does it, right? Everybody gets annoyed by it, and everybody gets stuck in traffic. And as we've all said a million times, traffic in Boston has gotten so bad. The old story about how, remember we had Barry Bluestone, the guy from, is he at UMass or Northeastern?
He was at the Dukakis Center at Northeastern.
Okay, he talked about how that if we don't do anything about the traffic situation in Boston, we're going to be sitting on the Southeast Expressway, not moving at all at rush hour.
No, he said the average miles per hour is declining every year, and if it continues to decline at the same rate, then we'll be going 0 miles an hour by whatever year.
So you'll be driving to go visit your relatives at Christmas, and you'll just never get there.
Well,
you'll have to eat Christmas dinner on 93 South.
I totally agree with you with traffic problems in Boston. You know what's most troubling?
What?
Is nobody goes to work. And still, with very few people going to their downtown offices, at least not 5 days a week, traffic is out of control.
It's bad Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. You notice the big difference
that's true.
between
Mondays and Fridays.
Monday and Friday. Ed in the car, thank you for calling.
Yeah. Hi, Ed. Hi.
Can you hear me?
Yes,
now
we can hear you now. Sorry,
Take it
Ed.
away. Yep.
All right. I'm a long-time listener, cricket caller, and Mayor Wu, I want to thank you you did amazing in Washington by defending hard-working immigrants in the community.
Yes, you did.
Also, what I'm going to say, you're amazing, as you just said, but I don't agree with you with the bike lanes and bus-only lanes, and I agree with Mark on there, because that's a lane that you only see a bus once in a while, and you cannot use it. That, in my opinion, is a driver in Boston that contributes to traffic congestion.
Absolutely.
Also, bike lanes, the bikers, they don't respect the traffic law. They ride like crazy. I was involved in an incident with a biker once, right? He hit my car because he ran a red light. So unless there's a physical barrier, as you see in countries in Europe, to separate the two type of vehicles, I don't think that they belong in traffic in Boston, because Boston wasn't built for a road for cars and bikers. So it's really a dangerous situation for everyone.
Well, Ed, I'm sorry. Go ahead. Finish up. Oh, okay. Well, Ed, thank you for your call. I think we both agree with him, and I think the mayor agrees. Even though there aren't those physical barriers like there should be physical barriers. Yes, it is true. By the way, I am a firm believer. We've had this discussion on the show a lot, that cops should enforce traffic laws against cyclists if they're violating them. But as has been said by many pro-bike people on the show, is a bike weighs whatever it weighs, and a car that's violating traffic laws, which many of them do, weigh thousands of pounds, and we've got to be as meticulous about enforcing the laws against them as well. We got to take a break, Marjorie.
Someone who says they live in the Fenway and goes to a lot of doctor's appointments in Chinatown, they use the bike lanes, and it's fast and reliable. And the bikes often do beat you, right? If you are driving next to a bike, they get ahead of you, and even when you you stop at the next light, and they just are going faster because there's not traffic in the bike lanes like there is in the regular car lanes. We're talking about bike lanes, and Jim's upset, little temper tantrum.
I wasn't going to have a temper tantrum.
You did have a temper tantrum. You were over the top, Jim. Over the top about Josh Kraft not coming on the show yet to go through the ringer with you, Jim Browdy.
I did not say any of those things.
Okay.
I did not.
You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
It was the peak of morning rush hour in Tokyo when all of a sudden police reports that people were collapsing in the subway. This week marks 30 years since the deadly sarin gas attack that terrorized Japan. We look back at that day and the doomsday cult that orchestrated the attack next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked /1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And the Simmons Leadership Conference, a one-day event featuring keynote speakers including Brooke Shields, Sint Marshall, and Jessica O. Matthews. Thursday, March 20th, in person in Boston and online. InclusiveLeadership.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marge Regan, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're talking about city bike and bus lanes, the politics issue in Boston that seems to punch, I would argue, well above its weight. Those who hate them are very vocal. Those who use them are just trying to get to work without being hit by a cyber truck. What do you think about bike lanes in Boston and beyond? Bus lanes in the city, how big an issue do you think it's going to be in the race for mayor? The number is 877-301-8970.
We have a texter, Tom from California, who says he heard a rumor that Josh Kraft was investigating the Wawa incident.
That's
and
funny.
Then Jim banned him because Wawa, Jim, as a young man, stole some products from the Wawa supermarket.
I stole nothing.
And he resigned the day before they were bringing in the lie detectors to investigate.
That part is true. I didn't steal anything.
Josh Kraft is looking into it, Jim, and we'll see what he finds, and he suspects that's got something to do with
I was the assistant manager of the Wawa on the University of Pennsylvania campus.
Yep.
And there was some theft, which I did not do, Marjorie.
Okay, that's why you resigned.
And I resigned
Day
because
before.
they were going to lie detect the staff, and in solidarity. This is just impossible.
Listen to this one.
Yeah.
Please call me Cassie. Until I moved outside 495, I rode my bike exclusively to work, 16 miles round trip to Cambridge. I lost 100 pounds. I did it all year round, all sorts of weather. There are studded bicycle snow tires. I use bike lanes where they exist, and please build more.
Did you know that about studded bicycles?
Well, I do know that riding a bike is great for you, right?
Yeah.
Great, aerobically and great for your legs and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So look at that. Oh, there's a picture of Jim as Walter Cronkite sitting behind the desk. There it is.
I mean,
I hope people can see that on YouTube.
Who is amused by that on our staff?
I am.
Really?
Let's go. Dustin in Somerville, thank you for calling.
Hello, Dustin.
Hey there.
Before you continue, Jamie, can you get me HR's number? Can you please? I'm sorry, Dustin, sorry. Dustin, go right ahead. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Hi.
First-time listener, first-time caller.
Wow.
Yep.
Hello.
I just wanted to call in real quick because I heard this comment that if the bus lane is empty, that makes it nonsensical.
Yeah, that's right.
And
that was me.
View,
I'm ready to get.
Yep.
Go ahead, Dustin.
Go ahead.
Well, so in my view, the value of the bus lane is that it's empty. It only has value if it's empty because that means that the bus can move quickly through it and not get stuck in traffic.
Amen.
And that creates like a little bit of an incentive to sometimes take the bus instead of drive. And if the bus has to sit in stop and go traffic with everybody else, it's moving way too slow. It's never going to compete with driving. And people are not going to take the bus.
Okay.
And you're going to have more congestion overall.
Dustin, you said it better than I. You are totally and completely right.
Let me defend myself.
Go ahead.
In the two places where there's a bus lane that I drive a lot, Washington Street and South End, going from Roxbury down to the Back Bay, and Huntington Avenue. The buses are rarely there, and when the bus, you can see them. They're big, Jim. You can see them, and when they start coming, everybody moves.
Oh, what are you talking about? Everybody moves.
No one is sitting there
If you drive in the bus
bus
lane and then people follow you into the bus lane, Dustin is right. There's going to be a jam there, and the buses are going to be slowed down.
People follow you out of the bus lane into their regular lane where they can see the bus coming.
Well, what happens when the traffic is filled on Huntington Ave? If the lane with cars is full, how are you going to get out of the bus lane?
Because people usually allow you in
Dustin,
there, and they're both long, straight streets, so you can see the buses for blocks and blocks
Can
away.
I tell you one thing? I wasn't going to bring this up because I don't like this, but I'm going to bring it up. Who is famous for having said people who care about their neighbors should never drive in a bus lane? Who said that? Somebody you respect quite a bit.
I have no idea.
Walter Cronkite said it.
Walter Cronkite.
I think it was on the CBS News on December 42nd.
Okay.
Bill in Cambridge, welcome to the show. How are you? We're talking bike and bus lanes. Welcome.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
I love your show.
Thanks.
Best news coverage, and you're the funniest people.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you.
Very nice.
I think I have a solution.
What is it?
To the bus lane situation.
What is it?
If you had a signal that the bus is coming,
brilliant.
When it's about a mile away, all you need is if you have a bus lane transponder, you can go in the bus lane and get out of the bus lane. And when you get the advance notice, the bus sends a signal, and you just get out of the bus lane when the bus is coming. If the bus is not coming, you should use the lane or it's wasted.
Thank you, Bill.
It's a waste of a lane.
It's a waste of a lane, a lot of pollution and traffic and nerves and high blood pressure.
Bill, in the abstract,
all it takes is a simple transponder to let you know the bus is coming, and I would call it the smart lane. Right now it's a dumb lane.
Dumb lane.
It's a bus lane all the time.
Dumb lane.
But if it became a bus lane when the bus was actually coming,
it'd be a smart lane.
It would be a smart lane. My last comment on the transportation world.
Yes.
Is Jim.
Yeah.
Jim, you have to sell your Tesla.
Okay.
You now seem like you're supporting or behind someone who's like turning our Constitution upside down and ending our democracy.
Okay, Bill, this will be your last call. Thank you very much. That was Bill. No, I respect your opinion. You are not alone.
Yeah.
I'm getting a lot of pressure, and I hear you.
Here's a good one.
I'd probably be saying the same thing if I didn't own one.
The 39 bus in Huntington Avenue is supposed to run every 15 minutes and actually does so on days Marjorie does not drive on Huntington.
That's true. By the way, it is ridiculous.
Oh, do I have a mannequin in my car to drive in the HOV lane? No, I don't. But I've seen a million. Remember the Globe did a bunch of stories about people putting fake people. They did have mannequins so they could get in the bus at the HOV line. Somebody had like a dog once. That didn't work well. But they have a state trooper at the entrance of the bike lane, of the HOV line.
Yeah, lane
to check if people actually have two people, and they've managed to fool lots of people.
So here's an anonymous texter. Isn't Marjorie looking for a new vehicle? How about buying a bus? Problem solved.
That's a great idea. And here's somebody else.
God.
I had a van before. Maybe I should just expand a little bit.
A van with no rear bumper.
That's
Why
right.
did you have no rear bumper, Marjorie?
I had a few problems with that car. Okay, listen to this. I think anyone named Kraft lost their chance of winning anything around here when Tom Brady left town.
Hey, Cullen in Rhode Island, you're next on Boston Public Radio. Welcome to the show. Hi.
Hey, what's up, Jim Rogers? It's actually Colin, but you know.
Oh, Colin.
Okay,
oh, sorry.
Apologies. Hi, Colin.
Lots of funny jokes happening. Anyway, so I'm in Providence. I teach bike safety education for youth, and I also run a bicycle-based nonprofit where we get kids from the inner cities into competitive cycling.
Wow.
Great. What's it called?
So
What's
one
it
major
called?
Point that a lot of
what's it called?
One PVD cycling.
Okay, great. Go ahead.
One PVD, yeah. So one thing that a lot of callers are missing, I think a lot of you two are missing also, is the fact that in the United States, bicycles are 100% allowed in the roads. However, when you are a bicycle in the road, you do have to abide by the rules of the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
So we teach kids all the time that, you are allowed in the road. You're not supposed to be on the sidewalk, because a lot of us have all had that incident where you're driving on the sidewalk and, riding your bike on the sidewalk and ending up on the front hood as somebody pulls out of the driveway.
Yeah.
So a lot of callers, I think, are missing that point. And also, as a greater issue, the trying to retrofit bikes into cities that were not designed for it is a very obviously decisive issue. And places like Amsterdam that have banned cars are, super successful in that. So, but I do want to point out again that bicycles are 100% allowed on the road. And a lot of things, one big issue is that when people get their driver's license, they aren't taught this. So there's a big disconnect as far as drivers learning the rules of the road and where bicyclists are allowed to be.
Excellent call. Excellent call. We really appreciate calls again when we discuss the topic again. Thanks so much for your call.
Okay, I was just checking to see if there's anything else I needed to read on here. I think we're done.
We are done.
I think we're done.
We're done with this.
We're done with this. That's
State of
right.
the City tonight. Tory Bedford will be our representative, anchoring the thing, and it'll be live on 89.7 GBH.
Would you like to say a few more times about how you've called Josh
I've
Kraft?
never
He hasn't called you back?
I don't have his number. I've never called him, and I've never called.
Okay. Up next.
And believe me, I am never bringing that up again, ever.
Up next, we're going to talk to national security expert Juliette Kayyem. We're going to talk to her about Trump talking to Zelensky this morning, what's happening with that, and what's happening with Ukraine. We're going to talk about Gaza. We're going to talk about judges. We've got a lot of stuff to talk about with her. She's next on Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, teacher by day, rapper by night, Cake Swag joins us to talk about her upcoming shows and for an in-studio performance. Then we meet the man behind the Stop You in Your Tracks public art installation of a satellite crash landing onto a parked Boston car. Plus, Love Your Labels, an organization supporting LGBTQ+ youth through fashion, art, and design. That's all on The Culture Show today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Skating Club of Boston, presenting the ISU World Figure Skating Championships with over 300 athletes competing at TD Garden March 25th through 30th for the title of World Champion. Tickets at isuworlds2025.com. And Comcast Business, committed to providing connectivity for your business with network and cybersecurity solutions. Comcast Business, powering possibilities. Restrictions apply. To learn more, you can call or visit comcastbusiness.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Walter Cronkite, live from the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. We're joined now at the library by national security expert Juliette Kayyem. Juliette's a former assistant secretary for Homeland Security under President Obama, faculty chair of the Homeland Security program at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Her latest book is The Devil Never Sleeps, Learning to Live in an Age of Disasters. Hello, Juliette.
Hello, Juliette.
Hi, everyone.
So, the president was talking today to Zelensky. He spoke yesterday with Putin. I guess Putin made him wait like for an hour and a half or something. But where are we on the Ukraine-Russia situation?
Putin has agreed to everything that he wants, meaning Putin. So that was a good negotiation. I agree that I get to have what I want. That includes he did want a ceasefire, no more bombing of energy infrastructure. That was already something that he wanted. And then discussions about commerce and trade supply on the Black Sea, which Russia clearly wants because it's one of its major trading routes. So that's what he got from Trump, which was what he already wanted. I don't know how that's a negotiation. Trump comes out, says there's a ceasefire, making it sound like all the conditions for a ceasefire have been met, or that Putin has changed his mind in any sort of way. I'm sorry, there was another piece to it, which was a prisoner swap, which those are happening all the time anyway. And by last night, the storyline is correct, which is, these ceasefires that Trump is running around saying he's such a good deal maker, everything is falling apart. It is Israel is bombing Gaza again, and
17 days without humanitarian aid, which is just unconscionable.
I saw the number, this is the Palestinian numbers, but I'm gonna go with them because the Israelis give us no numbers, that 600 Palestinians have been killed in the last 48 hours. And honestly, you know what my reaction was I didn't know there were that many Palestinians left.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, honestly, I mean,
Didn't
to
it say
bomb.
1 in 100 Palestinians has been killed?
Yeah.
1 in 100.
Yeah. So that continues, and then and I'm not sure what is going on with Ukraine. The phone call this morning, we're waiting for readouts on it in terms of what Trump wants from Zelensky. But remember, we've now left two meetings that Trump has had with apparently the people he's going to broker the peace with, Zelensky and Putin. One was apparently a great phone call. The other one was a caustic attack against our presumed ally and the person who was holding up a front against Russia. And that was a disaster in the Oval Office. So I don't know where this ends.
Well, I can tell you where it's going to end, and I don't have the expertise you do.
I'm like a product
The
placement for Diet
commercial
Coke.
part of this you glossed over quickly. Putin is working Trump again.
Yeah.
He knows he wants a business deal.
Yeah.
He's offering these rare earth minerals kinds of things. Trump is going to cut a deal, I assume, to the detriment of Ukraine, and Putin is smart enough to know it will never fall apart, that deal that is biased in the direction of Russia, because Trump is want to continue the economic relationship.
Right. So everything. So the deal that Trump gets is the deal that Putin wants. And just to be clear, like everyone I talk to in the energy development world, whatever deal we make is not going to come to any fruition on the minerals for a decade at least. And so, I mean, the idea that there's like something to gain from, even if you agree that we should loot Ukraine as part of a payback for supporting them in the war, it's not going to be payback at any stage. So the deal maker is failing miserably in what he wants to deliver. Russia, there are lots of continuing bombing going on by Russia, and you have to put three things together at this stage. It's not two. Russia owning whatever the exit strategy is going to be in Ukraine. Netanyahu owning whatever the ceasefire is, in quotes, against the Palestinians or with Hamas. And then there's a third piece, and just mentioning it so people know it's part of it, which is our bombardment of the Houthis in Yemen, which has the risk of engaging Iran in a greater regional war. Biden had been bombing the Houthis near the Suez. I agree. I think he should. We have to protect the Suez. So those three pieces are suggesting that whatever, that we're far from the end of war that Trump delivered, or Trump promised.
Let me just say, I did the math when you said 1 in 100 Palestinians killed. It's far higher than that.
Is it higher than that?
It's far higher than that, yeah.
What is it?
Oh, there were 5 million Palestinians?
No, there are 2.1 million Palestinians in Gaza.
In Gaza, right.
So if it's within Gaza, it's way above that number. Can we come back home here, talk about frightening situations?
Yes.
ICE did a raid in Chelsea, and I assume, based on the sentiment in the last couple of days, that the majority of people, probably in Massachusetts too, are fine with that. And I hope they read the Globe story today, in which Gladys Vega, who's been on the show, who's the executive director of La Colaborativa over there, makes the point that one of the, I think, 7 people that ICE grabbed had legal status and legal work authorization. And I'm paraphrasing what she said, nothing incites more fear in the community when it's not just going after people who are totally undocumented, which is cruel enough. One of these employers describes how conscientious and honorable their workers were. But when you grab somebody who you're not entitled to grab, that basically says everybody who looks like you is fair game, and that's part of their strategy, right?
So there's tremendous pressure on ICE. So here, let's start with where everyone agrees. Violent criminals who have temporary or no status in the country should go. And I think Democrats should say that every day. We're just way too loose on sort of what our rules are. Okay, so everyone can agree with that. So ICE now has a mandate or a promise of what's called mass deportations. No one knows what that means. No one knows what the numbers mean. Their numbers for deportations were under Biden's number. Just to be clear, Democrats deport as well. Somehow we don't seem to want to admit that, but we do. And there was tremendous pressure put on ICE this month. So ICE is getting its numbers not by the rational approach, which is there are just people we want out of here, and why are we holding them, and they should be out of here. Or even, arguably, people whose status is truly unlawful. In other words, they have no real status. They've never gone through a process. What's happening now is other pools are being directed because they just want the numbers. People whose status is legally authorized, but it is not permanent citizen status. That's the green card issue, but it's other statuses. So they're going after them because they need the numbers. Then they are going after people whose status is clear. They are allowed here, but they look Hispanic. No joke. And then they're going after U.S. citizens who look Hispanic, Puerto Ricans, others. So we've gone from everyone can agree, and now this idea of mass deportation, to U.S. citizens that are at least being held for some period of time. We do not have a country in which you have to carry, especially if you're Hispanic, proof that you're a citizen. But I'm not giving legal advice here, but you may want to carry around your passport to prove, or some proof of legal citizenship. This is where ICE is right now. And then you've got all the other stuff going on with El Salvador, and it's a totally different issue. It is terrifying communities. It is terrifying parents. So you are seeing school districts in this country with 15 to 17% of their students not showing up for fear that when the parents are picking them up, the parents will be taken. You can believe in wanting to increase our deportation numbers. You can believe in a strong border. None of this is all taking away from that. One, it's litigation. Two, it's U.S. citizens.
Well, they're not only not going to school, Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett from Boston Medical Center made clear that people who are fearful, even if they have no reason in theory to fear, don't go see their health professional. Kids are, people are not going to work and all that sort of thing. And I should also say, someone who has legal status, who a lot of people are talking about, including us, Mahmoud Khalil, one of his lawyers, Donna Lieberman, who's head of the Civil Liberties Union of New York, is going to be joining us tomorrow to discuss his case, and I wouldn't miss that because it's a really important case, a really important free speech case, and lots of other things as well.
Has, I mean, all of this has remnants of the world I lived in, which is the post 9/11 world and the Arab and Muslim community. You want to silence protests, say, against the war. You want to silence a community, and you go after an immigrant community by going after them on their status or ability to live here. And that proved not a great strategy, and one that was legally indefensible. That's what we're going to have right now. But that's different than what happened with the airplanes.
I know you have a kid at Columbia, and I wonder what you hear about the mood down there. It must be somewhat unsettling.
I receive stuff as a parent. I mean, not only do I watch it because this is my field, but I receive stuff. They've been very transparent about what they have and haven't done. They did not support this. I don't love all of their catering to, a lot of the parents and the board. They have the elements of anti-Semitism in the pro-Palestinian movement are real. They are not what is animating a lot of people for being pro-Palestinian. I'd like Columbia to make that clear. It's not a hard distinction to make. It does not make you anti-Semitic, as I've said over the last year and a half. But I don't know how they're going to respond to this recent salvo by the Trump administration that they want to take over some academic facilities. They've also
Can we stop on that for a minute?
Taken a lot of money.
We spoke to Khalil Gibran Muhammad, who's now at Princeton, part-time at Harvard yesterday, the day before, and I'm totally with him. The threat to academic freedom has never been greater than this notion that Columbia should put in receivership 3 departments for 5 years. That's one. Two, I don't know if you, when you were talking about Columbia, I don't know what word you use, transparent or whatever, unless I got this wrong, feel free to correct me. While they allegedly have been doing an investigation into student behavior for a year, they say, is it coincidental that they kicked some kids out right after this thing happens last week or so? They're basically kowtowing to Trump and yet another university president who is hiding under their desk rather than standing up with other. We talked the other day. I want to say this one more time. This dean of Georgetown Law School,
love him.
This trainer guy who had the courage to say to this rogue U.S. attorney in D.C., who's an election denier, Martin is his name,
and represented a lot of the January 6 people.
Essentially, screw you when he does a threat. We're not going to hire students from Georgetown Law School to work in this office until you do what we tell you to do. Good for him for having the courage
I think
to stand
the law
up.
firms, I think the universities better realize soon that a united front is going to benefit the mission greater. I mean, the idea that the law firms think, well, if we don't represent this law firm or that law firm, which Donald Trump is illegally sanctioning for them providing adequate representation to Hillary Clinton or January 6 defendants. The idea that at some stage Trump is going to stop going after law firms. This is you're doing nobody any favors. And I'm going to say it again because I say it every time I'm here, which is if the verbiage now, because it means nothing, of anti-Semitism is being utilized by Trump, who has strong ties to people who support the Nazis. Let's just make this clear. Has to be publicly identified and rejected. That you cannot just say these schools are anti-Semitic without saying what is it that's anti-Semitic about them, and how do you solve it in a way that is both effective and also preserves the mission of the school. And I'm telling
bended knee to Donald Trump.
I know. I'm saying the worst thing that has happened to protect the Jewish community from anti-Semitism is the overuse of anti-Semitism. It happened with terrorism too.
A rabbi said that in the Globe yesterday.
I mean, it is the worst thing ever, because now I don't see it. Now, I mean, if it's everywhere, it's hard to see. We said the same thing about terrorism. If you call everyone a terrorist, you're not going to see the real terrorism.
So here's an update on the Zelensky conversation with Trump.
I always get lots of emails after
Social
I say
media,
this.
here's a quote. Much of
ones.
the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Putin in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs. We're very much on track. I have no idea what that means.
Can we move? I should just correct myself on the 100 people because the Ministry of Health, and of course that's the Ministry of Health. We don't know how
Israel's
accurate.
not giving you the numbers.
Right, but the Ministry of Health, which is coming from Palestine, is saying 1 in 50. So I was way off. I read that earlier, and I apologize for that.
We talked about Mahmoud Khalil briefly, and again, we're going to talk to one of his lawyers tomorrow. The point I've made about this, which is I am not alone in this, obviously, is Trump won already. It doesn't matter what happens to this guy. He has chilled free speech on college campuses, even amongst people here legally. And I was jubilant yesterday when I read that a federal court had found that Doge's, Musk's effort to shut down USAID was unconstitutional. Until I read the story, I was thrilled. And then when I read the story, Trump won again, even if he loses the case, because the contracts have already been canceled, the people let go, and essentially he and Musk achieved their goals by dismantling this agency. And by the time the courts caught up with what's going on, the impact of their at least temporary decision that the Constitution was violated has no impact in terms of restoration of our services to people who need us around the world.
So part of what I agree with you, and one way to think about what's happening with the courts and policy, because this is a administration that, I mean, is going to use the courts and is pushing the envelope. The case that you just described is based on the Appointments Clause, but I'm also thinking about the invocation of the Alien and Sedition Act this weekend that then resulted in the deportation, and just to be clear here, of men with tattoos. That's all they have on them. That's all they have. I mean, I know we're focused on the legal stuff. If you look at the government's case against these men who are now in El Salvador in a horrible situation.
And the pictures
they had
of them.
tattoos. They had, and it's not even clear what tattoos they had. Is that the courts may be in a position, and Roberts did this yesterday with condemning Trump for mentioning impeachment, they're putting a line in the sand for future conduct. It's not ideal, but to the extent that now there's case law regarding the appointments clause and Elon Musk's authority, you may see different behavior in the future, which will benefit those workers and the recipients, right? The people who benefit from USAID in the future. None of it is ideal, but I don't want people to think this isn't working. If you just look at the cases, Republican and Democratic judges, a slap down by Chief Justice Roberts yesterday, the Trump White House is losing a lot. It has reinstated, I think I saw about 70,000 people it had already fired. His polling is down. The economy's plummeting. I know people wonder, like, where's the resistance? Why aren't we out in the streets? The resistance is taking the form of 1,000 points now. It's not a single march or a single whatever. It is, and if you look, it's not ideal. This is going to be a fight for our democracy for 4 years, but there are elements that are interesting. And for example, our allies have said they are no longer sharing intelligence with us. You look at you look at the tariffs and the terrorist pushback. Trump had to step back from that. So if you look at this from a sort of dialogue perspective, that democracy isn't a place and time, but it's the pushing and pulling of international relations and domestic policy. There's a lot of interesting things going on, and in that vacuum, perhaps Democrats should think about why did we lose, and I say we because you all know I'm a Democrat, why did we lose the narrative of explaining what government means in people's lives? They're discovering it now. What are we going to do to maintain?
You might want to stick around for the next segment, by the way.
But
we haven't
learned excellent book.
We keep talking about.
Talk to me about insurance.
But
I'm
Juliette,
with you.
Juliette, what are we talking about now all the time? Constitutional crisis. Who knows what that means? Yeah. And that we said we're going to lose democracy. Who knew what that meant?
Can I get into this conversation
phrases
for a second here?
Go ahead.
Well, Roberts got so much praise last night. I'm going to channel you from yesterday. I forgot who our guest was. So Roberts does what a normal judge would do, right. I would think, a leading judge, just like, as people know, your husband is a big shot in the appellate jurisdiction here in New England.
Is he?
He is. Yeah. And did the right thing. But as Marjorie said yesterday to somebody, my apologies, I just forgot who, maybe it was John King, he is also the guy behind the virtually absolute immunity decision for a president. And as Marjorie said to, I think, John King yesterday, why does Trump give a damn about violating court orders, creating a constitutional crisis, when the Supreme Court has basically said you can do any damn thing you want as long as it's within your whatever description by the court? And that's a pretty tough.
I'm with I don't.
You're
talk
more
about
hopeful.
I don't talk about the. You always say I'm more hopeful. I'm not ready to give up. Right.
Well,
so I'm going to look
for
pieces that make. And I do think. I don't believe polling, but I do think. But I guess I do. I do think that if we stop thinking about resistance looking like it did in Trump 1.0, Trump did win the popular vote. Democrats did not have a message that people felt related to them.
15 seconds.
Lots of lessons to learn there. I do like institutions, this is clearly consistent, defending themselves. Universities, law firms, the courts, and Congress. Come on, you guys. Okay. Man up, GOP senators, man up.
We have been speaking with national security expert Juliette Kayyem, former Assistant Secretary of Homeland Security under Barack Obama, Faculty Chair of Homeland Security at Harvard's Kennedy School of Government. Thanks a lot, Juliette. Up next, we're going to talk a lot about why Democrats didn't win.
More smart conversation about community issues is up ahead with Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan on Boston Public Radio, right after a news update from NPR. Stay with us here on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you.
And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its 2025-2026 season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Tipping Point author Malcolm Gladwell, Ken Burns, and conservation photographer Christina Mittermeier. BostonSpeakers.org. On the next Nova, explore the revolutionary engineering behind Paris's iconic landmark, which ushered in a new age of global construction that reached for the skies. Watch Building the Eiffel Tower tonight at 9 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Of the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. And speaking of returns, we'll end the hour with reflections on Needham's own Sunny Williams splashing down after 9 months on the International Space Station by listening back to some of our interview with her. That's next on Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Lakshmi Singh. President Trump says on social media that he spoke with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky for about an hour today. He said, quote, much of the discussion was based on the call made yesterday with President Vladimir Putin of Russia in order to align both Russia and Ukraine in terms of their requests and needs when it comes to a ceasefire between the countries. Trump also said Secretary of State Marco Rubio and White House National Security Advisor Mike Waltz would provide more details in a statement. The U.S. Institute of Peace is asking a judge in Washington to stop what has effectively been a hostile takeover by the Trump administration's government efficiency group. The institute was created and funded by Congress. NPR's Michelle Kellerman has the latest.
The Trump administration took over the headquarters on Monday, installing a new acting president after firing most of the board members last week. The U.S. Institute of Peace is asking a judge to issue a temporary restraining order, saying the president can only fire board members for cause. The plaintiffs in the case are the board members who the Trump administration claimed to have sacked. That includes John Sullivan, who was Trump's ambassador to Russia during Trump's first presidential term. The U.S. Institute of Peace is not a government agency. It's a think tank funded by Congress. Many retired diplomats work there. Michelle Kellerman, NPR News, the State Department.
A court-ordered deadline is now up for the Trump administration to answer questions about last weekend's deportation flights carried out under an 18th century wartime law. U.S. District Judge James Boasberg is seeking more details about the administration's actions, even though he had ordered the planes carrying alleged Venezuelan gang members out of the U.S. to be turned around. National Security Advisor Mike Waltz tells Fox News the gangs are the new ISIS.
I think if you had some of those, tattooed, shaved head men labeled ISIS, then we wouldn't even be having this debate. So this is about a wholesale shift on what a terrorist is and how they should be treated in the United States.
President Trump called for the judge's impeachment. That remark drew swift condemnations from various groups and from the U.S. Chief Justice John Roberts, who argued yesterday that disagreements with judges should be handled through the appellate process in the U.S., not through impeachments. U.S. stocks are trading higher this hour as the markets, investors await the latest information from the Federal Reserve's two-day policy meeting. The Dow is up 273 points, roughly 0.5% at 41,854. S&P is up 42 points. NASDAQ is up more than 1%. It's NPR.
Good afternoon from the GBH Radio Newsroom in Boston. I'm Henry Santoro. The state police investigator at the center of the Karen Reed case has been fired. GBH's Marilyn Scherer reports that Trooper Michael Proctor has been under scrutiny since last year when ugly text messages he'd sent about Reed surfaced during her trial.
Proctor was dismissed after the state police trial board found that his performance was unsatisfactory and that he used alcohol on the job. The now fired trooper faced major scrutiny during Karen Reed's first trial last year, with the emergence of text messages in which he mocked Reed and her health and appeared to assume she was guilty of murdering her boyfriend, Boston police officer John O'Keefe. Proctor's lawyer and family say they're disappointed by his firing, with the attorney arguing the outcome of the disciplinary process was predetermined. Meantime, Reed's retrial is scheduled for next month. Marilyn Scherer, GBH News 89.7.
Local advocates are celebrating a federal judge's ruling to temporarily block the Trump administration's attempted ban on transgender people serving in the U.S. military. The lawsuit was brought by the Boston-based group GLAAD, GLPTQ legal advocates and defenders. They won a preliminary injunction yesterday, meaning now the ban is on hold at least for now. One of the plaintiffs in the case is Nicholas Talbot, a transgender man who's a second lieutenant in the U.S. Army Reserve. Talbot says the ruling means he can keep doing the work that matters to him.
Transgender service members are just as qualified, competent, and dedicated as any other military member, and we are thrilled to be able to continue to put on our uniforms and perform the jobs we have worked so hard for in service of our country.
Talbot says he knows that even with the injunction, the push to keep the ban from taking effect is far from over. 48 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. Fisher's dedicated team of specialists provide resources on investing, retirement income, estate planning, and more. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com. Thank you. /GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hey, and I want to remind people at 12:55 we usually do our 2 more things, as we mentioned. Today will be 1 more thing. We're going to bring you excerpts from an interview we did that we really loved a few months ago when Sunny Williams was still in the International Space Station. She called us from the space station. It was a really wonderful 20 minutes. We're going to bring 5 or 6 minutes of that to you. That's at 12:55. But first, do you ever look at government and say, why can't we solve climate change, our housing shortage, our crumbling roads and bridges? Why were they able to rebuild Notre Dame in less time than it takes to renovate a news kiosk in Harvard Square, which is true, by the way? In other words, why does nothing work in this country? Our next guest says he has an answer, and it's not the people you might think who are standing in the way. We're joined now by Marc Dunkleman. He's a fellow at Brown University's Watson Institute for International and Public Affairs, author of a book that's being talked about in every corner of this country. It's called Why Nothing Works, Who Killed Progress, How to Bring It Back. Congratulations and welcome, Marc. It's great to meet you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you very much for coming. And boy,
can you move your mic up like an inch?
Yeah, that's
perfect.
Good.
That's good.
You nailed so
that's
many
good.
things. At least it seems to me you nailed so many things. But anyway, elaborate on your thesis and tell us who's causing this problem.
Well, the question that begins the book is, why is it that we can't get things done anymore? Like, we have this image, particularly those of us on the left, of government doing big things, the Tennessee Valley Authority, the Social Security Act, the Great Society, the New Deal, doing big things that people could feel almost immediately. And then something happens in sort of the 60s and the 70s where we ourselves become very suspicious of powerful government bureaucracies. We're very suspicious of public authorities, of federal departments, of folks like the folks that used to live here that sort of operate behind the scenes, like in the Vault, which is sort of legendary in Boston.
Yeah.
The Vault was a bunch of business leaders who basically ran the city.
They were all
quietly.
Most of them were Brahmins, weren't they? They were Boston WASPs, of white Anglo-Saxon Protestants.
But go right ahead.
But they were the notion that there was an establishment in every community, and that the establishment were the real folks who controlled things in a city or at the federal government. There was the Georgetown set in the foreign policy community. In every city, there was a sort of a sense of city fathers. And in the 60s and 70s, progressives themselves, who had built up this establishment, to do big things, to build the sewer system and the recreation and the transit system and whatnot. We ourselves looked at them and went, whoa, what have we created? We sort of created a monster. The classic story is in New York, there was a guy named Robert Moses who was the most...
A guy.
Yeah. But the most powerful man in New York from like the 1930s to the 1960s, and he built all the expressways and Lincoln Center and the UN headquarters and Jones Beach, and like you sort of name it. Robert Moses had the power to build housing projects and transit, and he did just about everything. He didn't like transit; he liked roads much more than transit. But he was a classic progressive in the old style, in the sense that his view was, if we're going to have a tragedy of the common, that we don't have a sewer system, that we don't have enough parks, that we don't have good mobility, you were going to invest power in like a powerful government bureaucracy that was going to solve that for you. And we got to this point in the 60s and 70s where we progressives who had created these big bureaucracies thought to ourselves, oh my God, these guys are really, they're corrupt, they're captured, they're not doing the public good, they're self-interested, whatever. What we need to do is put guardrails around them.
By the way, and you used the expression, progressives developed a cultural aversion to power was the nine. And by the way, the Robert Moses, if you're interested, my wife, I told you this, and other people are reading the 18,000-page book Power Broker, which is is a very, very big deal. What was the thing in the 60s and 70s, or what were the sets of things, Marc Dunkleman, that caused progressives to change?
Well, I think we saw what the establishment had done and woke up and said this wasn't good, right? It was the establishment that sent us into Vietnam. It was the establishment that did urban renewal and took down entire neighborhoods. It's the establishment that sprayed chemicals on crops that led to birth defects. It was the establishment that allowed for the big three automakers to put out cars that were, as Ralph Nader said, unsafe at any speed.
Yeah.
And you begin to say to yourself, if you're a progressive, maybe we can't trust these guys. And so we need to create guardrails that will protect future generations from another Robert Moses or Robert McNamara, you name it.
You gave some wonderful examples in the book, and the one we'd like you to start with is, and the reason we're choosing this, is because we probably discussed this every month with Charlie Baker when he was governor for maybe a year and a half. Hydropower coming out of Canada sounds like a great idea. What happened?
Well, in order to get hydropower that's in Quebec into the grid in Massachusetts, you need a power line. Right? You need a transmission line. Where's it going to go? It has to go through one of the intervening states, New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, Maine. That's passed. Charlie Baker passes a bill, signs a bill in early 2016, so we're moving on a decade ago, that says we're going to pay for that power line and we're going to subsidize whatever state accepts it. And immediately they pick a power line through New Hampshire. New Hampshire realizes the power line's going to cut through the White Mountains and won't allow it. So they go to Maine. The governor of Maine is for it. The legislature of Maine is for it. The company that wants to build the transmission line goes to all the towns that will be near the power line. They endorse it.
Was this LePage at the time? Sort of mini Trump kind of thing.
An early Trump, exactly right. And they think they've got it. And then over the course of several years, objections begin to spring up, and it becomes: can you get this siting board to say no? Can you create a referendum so that every locality that's going to be near the power line can say no? Can you find an environmental reason not? There's a rare orchid species in the North Woods of Maine, and I think it's on the endangered species list. And there's a fear that if you drive this transmission line through that part of the woods, that this orchid species may go extinct. And so there are just an endless series of vetoes in the system. And here we are, it's 2015, it's 2025. The best case scenario is that this line will open next year. It's been very quiet for the last year or so I don't exactly know where the project is, but it's pretty remarkable that here you have maybe the most climate conscious region of the country wanting to find a way to reduce our dependence on carbon emitting power. And they found a way, and we can't get it done, but not because the right is somehow standing in our way because we have created vetoes that make it impossible for even progressives to achieve progressive things.
And to quote Robert Moses, individuals have to yield to the advantages and needs of the majority. That's the counter thesis, that you shouldn't have to pass 100 tests, some of which you should have to pass. You shouldn't have to pass every single one of 100 tests to do something that's good for the people.
Somebody needs to be able to come in and say, look, I've looked at all the concerns. I looked at what the overall general interest is. I've looked at all of these intervening parochial interests. I've weighed them. Here's what we're going to do. And right now we don't have a system that allows for that kind of process.
Yeah, well, the thing that drives me insane, we talk about housing all the time. It's gotten out of control in Massachusetts. Charlie Baker, speaking of the former governor, he passed this new deal where people that were near the T were going to have to recreate zoning so they could build more multifamily housing there to ease the crisis. We've had different towns have objected to that. This happened when Charlie Baker was the governor. We haven't moved very far on this because we still have towns in court and people fighting over it. Then we had the governor that was in the other day, talked about this $4 billion housing plan. This is Governor Healy, that they've just talked. And she talked about housing being online. I'm not sure what housing online means, but it just seems like we know it's a mess, we know it's a disaster, and we can't seem to do that either with any kind of speed.
It's exactly the same problem, right? You've got the overall general interest is for there to be more housing in Massachusetts. I'm from Rhode Island. We need more housing in Rhode Island. There's really not a part of the country that doesn't need more housing. Everyone wants it. Nobody wants it in their community, right? And so the question is, who gets to decide whether a new multifamily can be built on this plot? Is it the person who owns the plot? Is it the neighborhood that is probably averse to it? For whether it's a low-income or a high-income community, everyone's got some reason not to want change. Or is it some powerful bureaucrat? And we have largely, over the course of the last 50 years, settled on the second of those three options, right?
I'm sorry,
what's the second?
Well, we've given power to local communities to veto endlessly housing that they don't like.
Well, let me speak to that. By the way, I'm part of the enemy that you're describing. I'm a process-oriented guy, and maybe too process-oriented, and I plead guilty right away. However, and I said this to you the other day, we are both an example of the problem here on housing and a solution to the problem. What the legislature, which we trash almost every day, had the courage to do under the leadership of Governor Healy was to mandate that there be these so-called granny flats, these small attachments to houses, be able to be built, and that they couldn't block them with local zoning solutions. That's exactly the kind of thing that you're talking about. Is it not a statewide mandate in this situation so that 351 cities and towns can't do their own little endless zoning thing around a specific issue? Isn't that the antidote to what you're talking about?
That is an antidote, yes, absolutely. Is you can say, now housing is a little different than linear infrastructure, as they say, because in housing, you've got someone who owns a plot of land, and you can say, and right now, zoning makes it so that the people who live near that plot of land can tell the owner what he or she can or cannot do. And so you could theoretically solve a lot of those problems by taking the power that the neighborhood wields and pushing it down to the person who owns the home. Right? Like theoretically, then that would encourage people to purchase lots that are single-family lots, build ADUs, granny flats on them, or in some cases, other states have made it so that any single-family plot can be repurposed as a multifamily. With the case of the transmission line through Maine, there's no way to push power down from the community into the hands of a local, because all the locals oppose it. You need to push power up to somebody who's going to say it's in the interest of everyone to have this line.
Well, let's pick one more example, if we can, that's near and dear to our hearts. We talk about it all the time, which I'm not sure it's in your book, but I know it was in a piece, and it's relevant, that you wrote for the Wall Street Journal or someplace, EV chargers.
Yeah.
We've talked about the huge mandate from the federal government, and then we read, I think in the Washington Post, 8 had been built in, or 58 or something. That's an example of what you're talking about, too. What happened there?
In that case, the Biden administration was very thoughtful about this, and they realized that the reason people aren't buying EV chargers is because they're afraid that when they're going on long distances, there won't be a charger there when they need it on the highway. So what they were going to do was they were going to put money to build EV chargers in the sort of the soft spots of the system, places where a private company wouldn't want to build a gas station or an EV charger station. And so they provided this money by formula to the states, and the states were then supposed to contract with private EV companies to build these spots. $5 billion by formula. At the end of the administration, 3 years later, only 58 had been built. And I went back and asked why. And it's not because people were lazy. It's not because people didn't want them to be built. There was no real opposition. The problem is that, like, you're giving money to a highway department in a state that has no experience talking to electric vehicle charging stations. They don't know where they're supposed to put them. They don't know what the regulations are. They don't know whether it's supposed to fit a Tesla or a different kind of car. They don't know what are the specifications. And even if they do know these things, which they eventually get to, and actually the Biden administration was pretty quick on doing the regulations, the charging stations need to be connected to the grid, and the grid therefore needs to be extended to the EV charging stations. And the utilities, they don't answer to Biden, right? They are their own companies. So they're sort of pleading, the federal government is pleading with these utilities to connect the chargers. So I think that probably we're going to get a bunch more EV chargers in the next few years. But the comparison is to the Tennessee Valley Authority, which President Roosevelt created in the early 30s. There you had a federal workforce, federal workers. They built the dams in the Tennessee Valley that created the energy. They built the wires that connected the poor farmers. They subsidized the appliances the poor farmers were building so that they would use the electricity. It was all top-down, one federal bureaucracy, one little lawyer from Wisconsin named David Lilienthal, who did this whole thing, and led it. Sort of a robust federal effort. Biden couldn't do anything like that because the architecture of government has changed so that power is diffused and dispersed.
We're talking to Mark, just if I can. Marc Dunkleman, the book is Why Nothing Works, Who Killed Progress, and How to Bring It Back. I'm sorry.
My favorite story of yours, though, is from it involves the little local developer who's now the president of the United States and Woolman Rink in New York City.
Yeah.
Tell us about Donald Trump and the rink.
So in the 1950s, New York City built a little skating rink not far from the Plaza Hotel in Central Park called Woolman Rink. And 20 years later, it's sort of drab and needs to be refurbished. So Ed Koch, who's the mayor who's going to bring New York City back, decides to tell his Parks Department, led by Henry Stern, to fix it. And so the Parks Department goes out and they are trying to find contractors who will fix it. They can't hire a general contractor because of an old progressive law that wanted to make it impossible for the mayor of Schenectady, New York, to create some fake project and then hire his brother-in-law to do it, right? It's an anti-corruption statute called the Wicks Law. And the Wicks Law requires that any municipality separate the electrical contract from the paving contract, from the plumbing contract, so that you can't have a general contractor. You have to bid them out separately. And the way that it works, the Parks Department just isn't equipped for this, so they do the piping to keep the refrigerant under the ice, and then it takes them another year to bid out the paving, and in the interim, the pipes don't work, right? There's a flood and weather or whatever. And so when the whole thing is done, they turn on the switch, and guess what? The ice doesn't freeze. So it's just a complete mess. And Koch, who's supposed to be bringing the city back, is embarrassed, and he's realized he's going to have to rip up this whole thing, and he's already spent millions of dollars, and the city's near bankruptcy, and he's going to have to do it again, and so he gets a letter from a developer who says, "Listen, Ed."
Who happens to own did he own the plaza at that time, or he was about to own the plaza? The rink was next to the plaza.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He says, "Listen, Ed, give me the rink. I will build it back for you. It's essentially just some piping and a slab of concrete. I will get this done for you. If it costs more, I will pay the difference. If it costs less, you get the savings. There's no downside." And Koch, who's sort of beside himself, says, "Fine." And sure enough, this developer goes in and does exactly what he says. He just clears it out. He finds a general contractor. He threatens him. The ring comes back. It is ready for the next Christmas season so people can skate. And Joyce Pernick, I think, goes and interviews the famous New York Times columnist, goes and interviews a skater early on after the rink has been reopened and says, what do you think? And this New Yorker, presumably, a liberal New Yorker, says, anyone who can get anything done in this city deserves a ticker tape parade. And they're referring to Donald Trump. It's a New Yorker referring to Donald Trump. And you can imagine like him reading that in the paper, right? As a young developer, just imagining himself on the Canyon of Heroes and all of this stuff. But the point is that the problem there was that progressives themselves had created a situation where government didn't work. And it ended up that the public, even a liberal public, was inclined to give Donald Trump power because he would just push through the stuff and get it done.
And he did.
And in that case, he did. I think he's been playing that game now. It's basically the same game for 40, 50 years.
Now, my question is, you say he threatened the contractor. Did he pay the contractor at the end of the deal?
You're the third person to ask me that. I have not seen any evidence to suggest that he didn't.
Okay.
So, Mark, the second half of your subtitle is on how to bring it back. Let's talk about that for the remaining few minutes. We have Governor Newsom in California to help rebuild Los Angeles says, we're going to get rid of some of these regulations, not huge.
Yeah.
We have Donald Trump, speaking of Donald Trump, who's trying to get rid of every regulation, which maybe you'll argue in a perverse way paves the way for progressives, if they ever take power again, to be able to do what they want to do. But are any of those models, or how do we bring it back, to use your phrase?
Yeah, I view this as an issue of balance. At one end, you've got Robert Moses and David Lilienthal and whomever else doing things from the top down, extremely powerful. No one can really question their authority. They make their decisions, and then it's off to the races. People can get bulldozed, doesn't matter, no recourse. On the other end, you've got a situation where almost anyone who's affected, anyone who's got skin in the game, can say no. These are the two extremes. We don't have to pick between A and B. Like, we can find some system where people who are affected by an idea have a voice without a veto. And there are limited systems like this. You've seen this work. Drug courts are sort of one example. If people remember the compensation fund after 9/11, there was one.
Ken Feinberg,
a local lawyer who he was the
Brockton,
arbiter.
Massachusetts, by the way.
There you go. Absolutely, absolutely. I think a senior counsel to Kennedy back in the day.
Yes.
And there are situations like this. We can have. There are ways to balance individual rights and public interest in a way that is not noxious to either.
So those are individual, I don't mean small in a pejorative way, but limited, defined situations, whether it's 9/11 fund or the drug courts, that sort of thing. If a governor called you on the phone, McKee in the state you work, or Healy here, and said, can you craft something that would apply to a larger set of things that would pass the laugh test in an environment where everybody is so jealous of their own power, individual people, legislators, is that doable, or does this pass that laugh test, or can it only be done in small defined areas of our lives?
Look, we've had in our American history, we have ping-ponged between these two extremes several times, right? Thomas Jefferson was very scared of centralized power. Alexander Hamilton was very eager to empower.
By the way, Trump never liked Hamilton. I don't know if you read that. Yes, he never really liked Hamilton. Go ahead.
But right.
He should have, actually.
Right from our victory in the American Revolution, we went to a system called the Articles of Confederation that was where power was too diffuse, and so a decade later we embraced the Constitution. During the 19th century, we have a system that is too diffuse after industrialization, and so we have the progressive movement, which consolidates power in these big bureaucracies. We have a moment where we realize these big bureaucracies are abusive in the 60s and 70s, so we diffuse power. This is cyclical. So is there one bill that the Rhode Island legislature, the Massachusetts legislature could pass and fix all these things? No. But right now, progressives are still of the mindset that we could fix everything if we just pushed power down to individual people. I think that we ourselves, as a movement, need to become more aware that we are standing in our own way by creating more and more barriers to...
And when we stood in the way, we helped pave the path for Donald Trump to return to power. Is that a fair statement?
Democrats are the party of government. government doesn't work. That puts us on a pretty lousy political footing.
But one last thing about this, we're almost out of time, but you have to almost be willing as a politician to lose. And I'm thinking very small bore in Boston. For years, people have said we have to shut down some of these Boston public schools because there's no kids in them or almost no kids in them and you have to heat them and blah, 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 blah. That has become a huge issue. The parents become hysterical. Everybody's hysterical. Marty Walsh didn't do it. Mayor Wu was trying to do it now. But it could cost you the election. So you have to be willing as a politician to do things that could make you very unpopular, and you don't see that very much.
You know, I think what we're going to discover is that people are frightened of those who, of the squeaky wheels.
Yeah.
But that increasingly over time, people are seeing that when nothing can get done, it's not good for our side. And so you're seeing now after this, Trump really humiliated us this last time.
Yeah.
And Democrats and progressives are looking at each other. And I don't think it's a circular firing squad yet, but we're at least saying to ourselves, maybe this is not an issue of messaging. Maybe it's not that we didn't say the right things. Maybe it's not these little issues. Maybe there's something more fundamentally wrong with our approach to governing. I think that if we're trying to convince people to trust government to do better things, we need to get government to do the things it does well. And we're pretty far from that now, and that ought to be our focus.
Before you say thank you to him, you're talking about the schools. She's doing exactly what you're saying with White Stadium.
She's doing White Stadium.
Whether
another
you support it or not,
another great example.
She's doing it.
And we'll see if she sticks to her guns on the schools. I mean, if she does, she'll be unusual.
Mark, the book is great. It's really, whether you agree with every concept or not, it is an important read, and we're really glad to meet you. Thanks so much for your time.
Thank you very, very much. We're going to speak with Marc Dunkleman. He's a fellow at Brown University's Watson Institute for International Public Affairs, author of a really great read, Why Nothing Works. It's shocking how many things don't work. Why Nothing Works, Who Killed Progress, and How to Bring It Back. Thank you very, very much.
And by the way, we should thank our friend of the show, Larry Moulter, who helped connect us, I should say.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Part-time producer of our show,
Larry Moulter. Okay.
We appreciate it, Larry. Thanks so much.
Coming up after a quick break, GBH Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen, host of The Culture Show. He's going to tell us about what Donald Trump has been doing down at the Kennedy Center in D.C. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Radio and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In 2022, the Chinese government told NPR's Emily Feng she was no longer welcome in China, where she had lived and reported for 7 years. Even so, she says she hasn't lost claim to her Chinese identity.
Being Chinese is not confined to the boundaries of the People's Republic of China.
I'm Elsa Chang. My conversation with NPR's Emily Feng on her new book, Let Only Red Flowers Bloom, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Bridgewater State University, helping create jobs for Massachusetts and working to connect industry leaders to graduates, elevating business in Boston and beyond. bridgew.edu/elevate. And The Huntington, presenting The Triumph of Love, Marivoux's beloved classic where mistaken identities, hilarious complications, and deeply felt desires collide. On stage March 7th through April 6th. huntingtontheater.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. Joined now by GBH News Executive Arts Editor, that'd be Jared Bowen, also host of The Culture Show here at GBH, which airs daily at 2 o'clock. Hello, Jared Bowen.
Good afternoon.
Hey there.
Hello, Jared Bowen. So you did some great stuff about this on The Culture Show, 35th anniversary of the heist.
Heist, I love that word.
I do too. The heist at the Gardner Museum. What's the deal? What'd you say?
Well, so I think it's a good moment to have optimism. And part of the reason I say that is because the FBI has talked about the fact that they think the paintings are still in existence. They're out there searching for them. Yesterday we had Anthony Amore, the director of security at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, on talking about he's in touch with the FBI nearly daily, that he's still X-raying walls and looking for the paintings. I think many people have thought because 35 years have elapsed, the paintings have not returned. And by the way, it's the world's largest art heist. Rembrandt's only known seascape is stolen. Vermeer, there are only about 30-something Vermeers in the world. It was stolen. People thought after 35 years, how are they possibly coming back? And what art experts say is that it usually takes, if they're not found right away, that it usually takes a generation or two for them to come back. Because it's basically what has happened in this situation. If you look at what the FBI has said in the past, if you look what Shelley Murphy reported yesterday in the Boston Globe,
Yes.
she's somebody who's also been covering this for years and years and years, that the authorities know basically who took the paintings way back in 35 years ago in 1990 in the midnight hours. And then it seems the paintings were shuffled around. Everybody who had any association with the paintings ended up dead. They were murdered. And then, as the FBI announced at a press conference a number of years ago, the trail basically went dead somewhere along the mid-Atlantic. But this suggests to us that the paintings were changed hands many times, and perhaps they've been hidden, and because people have died off, and now 35 years have elapsed, so maybe people who knew something at one point in time, they have died. And so it seems the likely scenario is that the paintings are hidden away somewhere, and it's just a matter of finding them. Just a matter. That's a huge
moving the
effort.
beach chairs and the garage if you buy somebody's old house.
$10 million awards out there, by the
Yeah.
way. You want to understand, Shelley Murphy's piece is spectacular. She interviews, I think for the first time, the former FBI agent in charge who says what his thesis is. And I won't go through it because most of us don't know the names of these people. Here's the part that I don't understand. Maybe we should ask Shelley this question. Two of the people who allegedly had, I think it's two in her story, who allegedly had some of the works of art, according to the FBI, were offered a deal. They were in prison, or they're facing charges. I can't remember what it was. One was in prison at least, maybe two. We're going to give you a deal, meaning get out a free jail card or something like that, if you tell us where these are. Neither of them did it, which means one of two things. Either the FBI was wrong, or they were so scared of experiencing the same fate as some of these other people, being murdered by the, whatever. What's your take on that? Why would they not take a deal?
I mean, this is what makes this so interesting and complex, because there are so many things that don't make sense. Why did the guard let them in that night? Why did they spend 81 minutes in the museum? Why did they take what they take? And then you flash forward to moments like this. There's a man in Connecticut who ultimately died a couple of years ago. He was Robert Gentile,
right, or whatever his name is,
however you say his name. He was somebody who they brought gun charges to and gave him this opportunity, because in his shed they had found that he had a list of the paintings that were stolen, and they also found a false floor underneath the shed. And he
Very suspicious.
I mean, this is when I had the most hope over the last few years, when they started to report on him, and I thought, this is a man who is old. Why would he want to go to prison? They are serious about this. They will send him to prison. They did send him to prison, and he still didn't talk. It doesn't make any sense. So, and is somebody who is that late in life and is facing death, are they really going to be afraid of people who probably no longer exist? It just doesn't quite make sense. I mean, if you listen to the interview with Anthony Amore yesterday, I think there's a lot he didn't say. There's a lot that he obviously knows. So I guess in some people's minds, it does make sense, but it's all very strange.
And by the way, the other thing that even people don't know a lot about this know that the sensors detected none of the robbers in the one room that contained, one of the works of art. And the only person that had been in there was a guy, Richard Abath, is that how you say his name, who was the guard. And while he professed his innocence to the day he died, the former FBI guy in the Shelley Murphy column says he was part of the deal. Is that not right?
The suggestion is that he was sort of leaving it aside for him to take later. The other interesting part of this is right now the Dutch room at the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum is under major conservation efforts, including the frames. Over the last decade or so, they've been repurposing, reconstructing, renovating these rooms at the Gardner Museum. This is a major one because this is where the bulk of the thefts happened. And you can actually go in while this conservation effort is underway, and you can see these newly conserved empty frames. I thought it was also interesting yesterday when I had them on the show. I asked, we always read that they tore them from, or cut them out of the frames, or tore them from the frames. What does it actually mean? If there are fragments and whatnot, they really wouldn't disclose that either. So there's so much information they're still holding on to. It's almost like the Kennedy files. Even 35 years later, they don't want to release it.
You know what I realize? There are a lot of people who listen to the show who are either relatively new to town or younger than 35. Explain why the empty frames are still there, Jared Bowen?
Well, a couple of different reasons. I mean, the big reason that a lot of people understand is that Isabella Stewart Gardner, in creating her museum, she curated this museum. She selected the paintings. She placed artifacts so that they're all in conversation with one another, and she stipulated that upon her death, the museum had to remain exactly as she situated it, including all of the artifacts, including all of the paintings, and if anything were to change, then the collection should be dissolved and everything sent to Harvard. So really, they have to get permission from the Attorney General now if they want to loan a painting out or do something like that.
Wild?
So that's part of the reason, although the museum will tell you the real reason that they have the empty frames hanging there is because they want, one, to remind people of what happened, but two, they believe they're coming back and they want them to be ready when they come home.
Okay, let's move
on.
on.
Can I mention one thing, though? Again, I mentioned the other day, but I love it. If you want to relive part of this, and it's a fictional version of a non-fictional thing. Any day now, the film that's going to be shown at the Assembly Mall, anydayfilm.com. It's terrific. Paul Guilfoyle stars, and it's really fun. And you should check it out Saturday.
Okay, so Donald Trump, as people may know, has installed himself as chairman of the board of the John F. Kennedy Center of the Performing Arts in Washington, D.C. Now he's thinking about hosting an honors gala there because he says he's the king of ratings. So we're going to talk about this. But before we do, I love Jimmy Kimmel. I'm going to play a little clip of Jimmy Kimmel, who's poking fun at the president, touting himself as the king of ratings, whether we like it or not, the king of ratings, according to the New York Times. Here's Jimmy Kimmel.
Trump told them that he thinks he might host the Kennedy Center honor show himself this year. He said he should do it because he's the king of ratings. That would be so great. Him hosting an award show, me at home tweeting insults while he does it. I mean, let's do this.
Yeah, so...
he said every station's going to be bidding for this. Every station's going to, that probably is.
So tell us about his various things he said while talking about the Kennedy Center, including Hamilton.
Yeah, so they just had a board meeting, and as we know, President Trump has had this absolute fixation on the Kennedy Center and the Kennedy Center honors. And I think if we look at so much of this and who he's targeting now, it does seem that it's retribution because while he was president, the Kennedy Center honors existed. People criticized him from the stage. He decided not to attend any of the honors, and it became this whole big event, despite the fact that the Kennedy Center board has always been bipartisan. You'll find both Republicans and Democrats weighing in on the programming and how the Kennedy Center operates. Well, now that he's taken over, he's moved people off the board, or people have removed themselves from the board. So it's entirely, it seems, GOP-driven board. You have people like Usha Vance. You have Bob Kraft's wife,
Laura Ingraham, Maria Bartiromo from Fox.
Bondi, the Attorney General. They're all on the board. So they had this board meeting this week, and while he also had his photo op, where he instructed people to take his picture up at the presidential booth in what people described as an Evita-like pose, because in one of his books he did say it was his favorite musical. He saw it many times with Ivana Trump. With Patti LuPone starring. He also talked about the place is deplorable, it's in rundown condition, they want to rehab it. He has great ideas for who should be honored, so he's suggesting that he will now pick those who are honored for the Kennedy Center honorees. He bemoaned labor unions because Lee Greenwood was there. He is also a board member. He wanted Lee Greenwood to do a little number, but it would cost money, about $30,000. He described it to move a piano because of labor restrictions. So I think maybe he's alienating unions there. So this is where we are, where he wants to have complete control.
Let's play a little sound of him describing, Meryl Streep, as we know, is overrated, as we heard a few years ago when she came out against him. Here's what he had to say about Hamilton and the future of the place, like Jared was talking about. Here's Trump.
I'd say come here and see a show. I was never a big fan I never liked Hamilton very much. And I never liked it, but we are going to have some really good shows. I would say this, come here and watch it, and you'll see over a period of time it'll improve very greatly physically, and we're going to get some very good shows. The thing that does well are Broadway hits, and we have some beauty. I guess we have Les Mis coming, and we have some others, but the Broadway hits have done very well.
He's like a PR guy. I mean, it's really... And by the way, I assume the reason he hates Hamilton is because Lin-Manuel Miranda doesn't support him? Is that why he hates him?
And it's a mostly black cast.
Oh, of course,
and
that's
by the
right.
By the way, isn't Hamilton one of the biggest hits ever on Broadway? I mean, people were flying all around the country when it was playing elsewhere because they couldn't get tickets on Broadway and paying
including
$600.
Cali.
Yeah, I mean,
Chicago.
people paying $400, $500, $600, $800.
It's still an extraordinary juggernaut wherever it plays, and so this is a case where it wasn't canceled, where Lin-Manuel Miranda stepped up and said, we don't agree with the values here. Jim and I have had this debate about whether you perform or whether you don't. In this case, Lin-Manuel Miranda said, no, we're going to step back. We're going to take this show somewhere else. And this is a huge economic boom
that's of
for
course why he did it.
for any theater which is there, because you get all that merchandise that you're selling. You get the boost in attendance. So theaters want to book Hamilton in. Also, where shows usually come in for just a few weeks now, you can have Hamilton come and sit down in your city for a while, and it's just going to probably sell out for its entire run.
It's the best thing I've ever seen in my life.
You don't think Kid Rock is going to sell out for a couple of months every night?
Well, I think Kid Rock is going to get a Kennedy Center honor.
Well, I think that's pretty clear.
Well, it said the people he's focusing are Mel Gibson, who just had a big dust-up about his guns getting taken back, or he's wanting to get his guns back, and Sylvester Stallone. Those are the big ones he's talking about.
Oh, and John Voight.
John Voight, yeah, those are all people who support him.
And Jim, I want to go back to what you were just saying in terms of, sort of laughing, but also saying it's true that the networks will probably race to spend more money because for the Kennedy Center, the right to broadcast the Kennedy Center honors, and we've already talked about this, how Amazon has rushed forward to spend $40 million so that they can have the broadcast rights or the streaming rights to Melania Trump's documentary. Well, a lot of that money is going directly to her, who is the executive producer, so this is all currying favor. So it will be interesting to see
there will be huge
what
ratings,
happens with the networks.
I think. Don't you think? I mean, people are going to tune in to watch Donald Trump be the host of the Kennedy Center Gala. I mean...
And there continues to be a divide, too, about... I just had Margaret Cho on the show, who was supposed to be part of a women's comedy festival at the Kennedy Center. The festival was canceled. I never quite got out from her why it was canceled or whether they pulled out themselves, but she said, I would love to take that stage. I would love to be there, be on that stage, say exactly what I feel, despite who is operating and controlling the editorial content in this moment.
How do you think the Kennedy family feels, by the way? You have RFK Jr., who is abandoned essentially the whole history of the family, tried to exploit his father and uncle
liver oil
in his ads. You have the Kennedy Center taken over by somebody who doesn't believe in any part of the Kennedy legacy. I mean, it's really...
And then using the Kennedy Center Day to repeat that they're going to be releasing the Kennedy documents regarding the assassination. It's a strange tie and whirlwind.
A very good point.
Well, don't forget Melania did a very Jackie Kennedy-esque outfit for the first inauguration, remember? With the hat and the light blue and all that. It was a stunning outfit, actually.
I love that hat from the inauguration.
Yeah, I know.
That was keeping everybody at a long distance. It was her own built-in barrier.
One last thing about this. Everything I've read about the Kennedy Center, starting with his takeover. Oh, forget this. I was going to ask a stupid question. The guy who's in charge of the place, who is a Trump guy, after something is canceled the other day, says, out of the blue, we believe in equity, inclusion,
oh, yeah, that was weird.
Diversity. Richard Grenell. What is that about?
It was because Vice President Vance was attending.
He was booed.
An audience.
He seemed to be including Vance. Like he's a straight white guy. He gets included in the diversity, equity, and inclusion.
But I don't understand why Grenell, who was Trump's appointee, said it when it's anathema to Trump. Do you get what the point was there?
I mean, his argument, it was because one person, an official, was booed. We're supposed to be more inclusive and welcoming of everyone.
Of middle-aged white guys.
Of middle-aged white guys.
Okay.
And the gay men's chorus was canceled, and Grenell is a gay guy. I thought that was odd, too. I mean...
I will say what gave me a little bit of hope is to understand the new chief financial officer is somebody who worked for Governor Pataki, Governor Bush, Arnold Schwarzenegger, so at least this is somebody with experience in administrations who have been applauded in various regards
didn't read
for
the
what they've
paper this
done.
morning? Deported this morning.
Yeah.
So that was really unfortunate, but they had to do it.
Okay,
can we talk about John Wilson?
Yes.
I have to say, I've seen this I'm humiliated by this exhibit.
Me too.
I've seen Big Head maybe a dozen times and been wowed by this thing. I didn't even know who, this is mortifying, I didn't know who John Wilson was until we did work last night in anticipation of you. Who is he and what's going on at the MFA? Who was he and what's going on at the MFA?
I will say I have special ties to John Wilson because he was the first ever profile I did on Open Studio. He was our first ever interview piece late in his life. He is a very significant figure in American art history because he has since died, but because of his contributions as a black man and representing the black community throughout the 20th century. But he never got his due, even though he created the bust of Martin Luther King that's in the Capitol Rotunda, which, by the way, made him the first black artist, the first black figure to be represented in both of those instances. But in this new MFA show that's on view through June 22nd, it's called Witnessing Humanity, The Art of John Wilson. But by the way, it's here at the MFA before it goes to the Metropolitan in New York. So this is also very significant and a great moment to see it here. We see the span of his art throughout his high school years and even earlier when he had this incredible technical proficiency. He was just a student.
We should say here
in Boston. Yeah. He was so technically proficient that he was already being acquired by museums and already being shown in galleries
as
and
a high
museums
school kid?
as a student.
That's incredible.
His work is so evocative. So we see him move from very early on in his career when he was dealing with the absence of representation of black people in his career to time he spent in Mexico where he really became besotted by the muralists and all of the color. He goes to Paris, knocks on the door of Fernand Léger and learns about color and different art forms from him, brings that all back. And I have to tell you, one of the things that most struck me in this show is this beautiful tenderness that he is a man who represents parents and their children and men clutching their children and families together. And it's so beautiful. You can almost feel the softness of that contact.
Did he do a thing on his daughter in the show? Am I right about that?
You see his children represented, his daughter, his son. He's a man who had hope. At the end of the show, you find this mural, I believe it's called The Young Americans, and this was rendered in the 1970s, and it's for the hope that he saw in America. He himself was in an interracial relationship, and you think in the 70s, depicting this in Boston, busing, segregation. We understand what he was looking at in the world, but he always had this great hope. And so it's just a beautiful, beautiful show, not to mention the sculptures that we have in Boston, like it's familiarly known as the Big Head. It's really, really gorgeous and really, really inspiring.
Yeah, Eternal Presence, I think, is that the
That's the name of it, yeah.
Can I say, since I admitted my total embarrassment about not knowing about him, and I really am embarrassed, why wasn't there a celebration of his work in his lifetime?
Well, there are a couple of reasons. I mean, one, definitely because of when he was making, black artists were not represented.
But even more
black
recently,
artists were not given their due. Also because he sort of took himself out of the museum and the gallery world because he became a teacher. And so he spent a lot of time doing that. And so, like an actor, like any other thing in the arts, you have to really keep yourself front and center and chase it. And he didn't necessarily do that. I mean, the fortune in this case and the beauty in this case is that people are looking back now, they're looking at his work and saying there is absolute merit here. It is our responsibility to push him forward. So in this case, he didn't necessarily have to do it himself. His work is being discovered in a new and major way. I mean, I can't tell you how significant it is that the Metropolitan Museum in New York is taking this show and putting it there on a national stage. That is huge. So it's wonderful to see this for him and his family, and much of his family was there for the opening.
That's
including
great.
His wife.
That's great. We're running short of time, so tell us what's on.
No. Let's hold it because this shouldn't take 30 seconds.
It's
there.
The Gardner?
Yeah, but it's there for a month or two. So
we're going to hold it? Okay, all right.
Hold it till next time,
Just tell us
Jared,
on the culture show then.
Yeah, we're going to be treated to a performance from Cake Swag, a local artist who is a rapper, theater artist. She is fabulous. So she's going to come in and tell us some of what she's been doing and, as I say, do a performance. Remember, we've talked about here the Nissan Altima parked in downtown Crossing that had the satellite crash on it.
Yeah.
We have that artist who's going to be joining us today.
That's cool. That is
to
really
talk
cool.
about his work. And then we'll also speak with Joshua Croak of Love Your Labels and the big teen fashion show they have coming up in Worcester.
Terrific. Jared, thank you very much.
Good to see you, Jared Bowen.
Great to be with you.
Bye.
We have been speaking with GBH News Executive Arts Editor Jared Bowen. He's also host of The Culture Show here at GBH, which airs daily at 2. And you just heard about the great lineup for this afternoon on The Culture Show. It comes on right after us. And on Friday, Jared and the gang broadcast right here at the library. Up next, a special edition of Two More Things. We're going to talk about the astronaut from Needham who just came back, her return. Up next, you're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Tonight, Mayor Michelle Wu will address Boston in her third annual State of the City, and GBH News has your live coverage and analysis. With City Hall reporter Soraya Wintersmith on the ground and politics reporter Adam Riley in the studio, we'll break down the key takeaways from the speech and discuss the major issues facing Boston in the year ahead. I'm Tori Bedford. Join me tonight at 7 for Boston's State of the City 2025, here on GBH 89.7.
Support for our programs comes from you.
And Gentle Giant Moving and Storage Company, employing athletes since 1980 and currently hiring to join their team. Gentle Giant is an equal opportunity employer. More at gentlegiant.com/careers. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. bostonspeakers.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Instead of two more things, as we said throughout the show, we're going to spend the next few minutes talking about one good big thing. As Marjorie mentioned, and as I'm sure you all know, yesterday NASA astronauts Sunita Williams, Sonny Williams, and Butch Wilmore, along with a cosmonaut and another American astronaut, splashed down off the coast of Florida. The two of them, Wilmore and Williams, had spent 9 months in space after they were only supposed to be there 8 days when their original Boeing Starliner craft was deemed unsafe to get home. Here's the splash landing yesterday on a NASA broadcast, a warning. They do refer to the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America. Here it is.
We're going to stand by for splashdown located in the Gulf of America off the coast of Tallahassee, Florida.
And splashdown. Crew 9 back on Earth.
You know, I don't know if you saw this live. I saw it live on CNN. It was unbelievable. The sky was perfectly blue with a few stripes of clouds. The ocean incredibly blue. And then finally, when the capsule plops into the water with these four beautiful what do you call them? What are those things called?
Balloons.
Balloons. Well, not balloons.
Parachutes.
Thank you.
Sorry, not balloons. Parachutes.
The most incredible thing, maybe a minute after the capsule was in the water, dolphins started swimming by. It was one of the most beautiful scenes I'd ever seen. It was really, really great.
You know, we got to ask Simon Montgomery when we talk to her later why the dolphins would show up like that.
Exactly
and start.
Right, yeah.
Anyway, last October, we were lucky enough to talk to Sonny Williams. It comes from Needham, by the way. She has a schoolmate named after her there. And that was when she was still up in commanding the International Space Station, and she didn't know when she was coming back at that point. We asked her a lot of questions about what she was doing, but, you know, because her hair was sticking straight up, like 12 inches above her head, we had to ask her about the impact of gravity on her hair. So here is that interchange. We are so thrilled to talk to you, and I do love your hair. That's what zero gravity does. You don't have to worry about curls or brushes or anything else, right?
It's got a lot of body, and I like it, and it's a free card to be a little bit wild.
And then we also asked Sonny what she thought about growing threats and distrust of science, which has infected this country, and then she shared how her work as an astronaut she hoped could counteract that.
You know, launching people and rockets to space, to go live here, to right below me exercising in space, to talking to you while we're orbiting the planet 17,500 miles an hour. And when we could bring all that back home to people, they realize that there's science behind it all and the importance of it. And I think people want to get involved. So in my mind, the best thing we could do is be good ambassadors, good role models, and get more people involved and wanting to, you know, discover, explore, and that's how we get them back.
She was great.
So this conversation took place before the 2024 presidential election and Donald Trump's second election victory, and before his administration took office, and Elon Musk's Doge started slashing funding for scientific research across the country.
But in all fairness, because of the problems with the Boeing Starliner, it was Musk's company, SpaceX, that brought Sonny, Butch, and the other two home. Of course, he played it up as a rescue, claiming Williams and Wilmore were abandoned by the Biden administration, which was not true. But we also spoke to her, to Sonny Williams, when we did in October. We watched her float in the stations as a couple, is how you pronounce it, with the blue Atlantic Ocean visible through the potholes behind her. I asked her how that view, that perspective, speeding through space, watching the entire planet rotate below her, how it changed how she thinks about daily life back on the ground.
I think the one thing I really get from being up here is we take life a little too seriously on Earth. We get aggravated with some of the littlest, stupidest things that really we shouldn't, because this is our one big planet. This is our one big place that we live. You know, we don't really know if anybody else lives anywhere else, so we really should all just get along.
I'll tell you, welcome home. That was really one of the thrills I've had on the show.
Yeah,
she was terrific and is
She was
terrific.
great, and it makes you really feel proud
It does.
of something our government does do right. We were talking about what it does wrong. Well, they did this.
Well, in fairness, with a private sector partner.
With the
it was
private
SpaceX
sector partner,
in this
that's
Lifelong learning, and the Beacon Circle shares that commitment with gifts of $2,400 or more. It's one big way to help keep our community informed and connected. Learn more at gbh.org/Beacon Circle.
Support for GBH comes from you.
And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer, the Unclaimed Property Division, is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jim Bowdy, ahead in hour 3 of Boston Public Radio, live from the Boston Public Library. Despite their name, there's actually very little that we know about the mating habits of the majestic humpback whale. But now, for the first time, scientists managed to observe 2 humpbacks in the act, and in a twist sure to upset Donald Trump, it was 2 males. We'll talk about that and the beavers who've gone rogue in Prague with Animal Authority Cy Montgomery.
I'm Marjorie Egan. Then we'll end with you, opening phone and text lines for conversation about doggy bags. A piece in the New York Times traces a trend of eaters skipping out on the take-home meal. We'll ask you, is it better to toss out the leftovers from the get-go rather than going through the motions of taking it home in plastic containers to become refrigerator science experiments? Or should we all collectively be making an effort to be a little less wasteful with our meals? Call or text in the third hour of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library.
Live from NPR News, I'm Lakshmi Singh. The Prime Minister of Israel says any further talks for a new ceasefire deal with Hamas will only take place, quote, under fire. Israel launched new airstrikes early yesterday. Gaza health officials say hundreds of people have been killed or injured. Here's NPR's Aya Batrawi.
Israel's offensive, dubbed Operation Strength and Sword, began with targeted strikes killing several mid-level and senior Hamas officials. The attacks shatter a weeks-long ceasefire after talks to free Israeli hostages and permanently end the war hit an impasse. Hospitals in Gaza report that more than 170 of those killed in Israel's initial wave of bombardment have been children. It comes as hospitals are partially functioning or destroyed in Gaza, and as Israel continues to block the entry of fuel, food, medicine, and other basic goods that Gaza's 2 million people rely on for survival. Hamas says it remains committed to the initial ceasefire agreement that was supposed to lead to a lasting truce. Israel's defense minister says Hamas must understand, quote, the rules of the game have changed. Aya Batrawi, NPR News.
For the first time since their public blow-up at the White House weeks ago, Presidents Trump and Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine spoke by phone today. The White House says much of the hour-long conversation was based on the call that Trump had with Russian President Vladimir Putin yesterday. According to the Kremlin's readout of yesterday's meeting, Putin agreed to a pause in strikes on energy infrastructure, but he also demanded a cessation of Western military and intelligence support for Ukraine. From Paris, NPR's Eleanor Beardsley has reaction from European Union leaders and the public.
This is deeply shaking the continent. There's a view that Putin is stalling so he can continue the war and that he's playing with Trump, who Europeans believe is naive, has no experience with Putin, and wants a peace deal so badly he'll do anything. The former French ambassador to the U.S. went on French TV last night, Gérard Araud, and he said Putin is just signing on to the peace deal not to annoy Trump, but he's testing the waters to see how far he can go. He says it's Putin's dream for Russia to be treated as a superpower, dealing one-on-one with the American president over the heads of the Europeans.
WVXU's Nick Swartzel reports an Ohio representative is seeking answers from the administration about the cancellation of a contract tracking children allegedly abducted from Ukraine by Russia.
Representative Greg Landsman says he's sending a letter to Secretary of State Marco Rubio asking for information about satellite and other evidence tracking the whereabouts of children Russia is said to have taken from Ukraine. A program led by Yale University's Humanitarian Research Lab collected the data. Landsman says the initiative's contract was recently canceled as part of the Trump administration's efforts to cut government spending.
Now the database is gone, the data is no longer available, and nobody knows what happened.
The Washington Post reports the contract was worth about $13 million and was tracking the whereabouts and identities of as many as 35,000 Ukrainian children. For NPR News, I'm Nick Swartzel in Cincinnati.
This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A Boston-based legal advocacy group has won a temporary victory in a lawsuit challenging the Trump administration's attempted ban on transgender military members. A judge issued a preliminary injunction yesterday in the case brought by GLAAD, GLBTQ legal advocates and defenders. Jennifer Levi is GLAAD's Senior Director of Transgender and Queer Rights.
What the court concluded is that the goal of this ban has nothing to do with military preparedness and everything to do with harming a class of people who want nothing more than to serve their country.
The lawsuit's plaintiffs are 6 transgender military members who sued over the ban soon after it was issued in an executive order signed by President Trump a week after taking office. Immigrant rights advocates are back on Beacon Hill today for this year's Immigrants' Day rally. 2 years ago, attendees of the very same event cheered a new law allowing everyone to apply for Massachusetts driver's licenses regardless of immigration status. Then last year, they counted the extension of in-state college tuition rates and financial aid to undocumented students as yet another win. But now, 2 months into Trump 2.0, the mood has changed big time. Some immigrants are now dealing with a crackdown on immigration, pledges of mass deportation, and the detainment of green card holder Mahmoud Khalil. And as you've been hearing here on GBH, fears are also spreading through Chelsea and East Boston about ICE arrests in immigrant communities. 49 degrees outside our studios in Brighton. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive Insurance. Progressive is looking for dedicated and forward-thinking individuals to join their growing team. More information, including application, at progressive.com/careers.
It's Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you very much. Hello again, Jim.
Hey there, Marjorie. We're joined now on Zoom by naturalist, author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book is What the Chicken Knows, a new appreciation of the world's most familiar bird. Hello, Cy Montgomery.
Hello, Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan. So good to talk.
Great to see you as always. So, we were just talking about the astronauts coming back from space, including Sunny Williams, who's from Needham. We love the local angle. We actually got to interview her. And Jim was talking about how right after the capsules came down and the parachutes, above them and they landed in the ocean, all these dolphins started swimming around the...
Isn't that... What a welcome.
Yeah.
Don't you think that is the best welcome that they could possibly have?
What is that? Is that just curiosity or why?
Waiting all that time.
Yeah, but what was that? Why did the dolphins do that?
Well, they're curious. They want to know, what is this thing that just crashed down? They've probably never seen anything like it, and they wanted to come and investigate.
So that's all there is to it.
And it was beautiful. If you haven't seen it, you really have to watch. I mean, as beautiful as it was, the capsule coming down and landing in the ocean, the dolphin thing was almost magical. It was really quite...
Yeah, I love that, curiosity is what prompted these humans to go up into space.
Yeah.
Good point.
And curiosity is what prompted these dolphins to come and see them.
So
yeah, but you know what that did to the cat, by the way, so that's a whole other story.
But let me just ask you something. Is that sort of a general thing? I mean, space capsules landing obviously is unusual, but will dolphins follow other boats like that they see, or sailboats, or is it just because this was so dramatic?
Oh yeah, dolphins will sometimes follow. I've had this happen to me. They want to know what's going on. Sometimes they like to kind of ride the waves that you're creating as your boat passes through the water. Sometimes they just want to see what's happening.
By the way, I hate to say this because every time I make a statement like this, Marjorie mocks me, but I actually been in boats where the dolphins have been trailing alongside, which is really... Try to control yourself, Marjorie.
Is it the whale watching boats?
Actually, it was.
Yeah.
At least one of the times
I think
it
that's
was
where
off
people do
Provincetown
see
or
them,
somewhere. Yeah, it was incredible.
Okay.
So, it's interesting. Well, not surprising. Every time you're here, Cy, we have a piece of our segment discussing animal sex. And we don't want today to be any different. So we're going to talk about the first sighting of humpback whales having sex. And before we get your thoughts, here's Colin Jost from SNL on Weekend Update talking about this unprecedented photograph of these two humpbacks.
For the first time ever, two male humpback whales were photographed having sex. Learn more about it in the heartbreaking drama Humpback Mountain.
Now, for those who didn't... So I think that's funny, too. We do, too. For those who did not see the photograph or read the story, why the joke? Why was Colin Jost making that point there, Cy Montgomery?
Well, this is the first time ever that two humpbacks have ever been seen mating. And obviously it goes on a lot, or you would not have any humpbacks.
That's a very
but,
good point.
How's this done? Who's on top? How do you do this when you have no hands? How do you hang on in the water with your mate? And so these two citizen scientists, photographers, were so excited when they saw these two whales mating. It was the first time ever to see how it's done. And turns out it's two males. So.
Is that unusual?
We don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, this is the first time.
Gay whales.
But we do know dolphins, frequently males have sex with other males. And there's lots of reasons that many animals across taxa will have same
Why?
sex.
What are the reasons?
Sex. Well, some of them is they just want to cuddle. It's a way of establishing a bond with someone, just like some people go out and play tennis, some people go out and they have sex. So this can be the case with bonobos, for example, who are just as closely related to humans as are eastern chimpanzees and look very much like chimpanzees. But bonobos, males have sex with males, males have sex with females, females with females, adults with youngsters. It's just like one big love fest all the time. And it's often done when someone's just had a scare, and everyone needs to feel like it's okay, the same way that you might want to hug after something scary happened or after a fight broke. It's makeup sex, and you can have makeup sex with someone of the same sex. Also, sometimes sexual advances, as sometimes with humans, it can be an aggressive act or an attempt to dominate somebody. And in this case, whale A was a smaller animal approached by whale B, a bigger animal. Analysis of the photographs show that the animal who was being penetrated by the whale B, the second male, he had a jaw injury and he was covered with whale lice, which is a big problem. You usually get that when you're sick. And the other male whale may have been doing that to essentially show off, hey, I'm bigger and stronger than you, and basically kind of being a bully. But we don't know. But we do know that sex of all kinds is all over the animal kingdom, even in insects, and often in birds.
If I can interrupt, you've mentioned a couple of species where there's same-sex sexual activity. This piece we read in Smithsonian Magazine is quoting a study that came out in the journal Nature in October of 2023, saying there are 1,500 species that we know of that engage in same-sex sexual activity, yet a lot of know-nothing sadists, humans, talk about how unnatural this is because they're either stupid, hateful, or choose to ignore the reality in the natural world, right?
I totally agree. There are many healthy, natural ways to have sex. And animals have been exploring all these different ways for millennia, long before we ever came along. So, yeah, it's ridiculous to say that this is unnatural because it's totally natural, to the point that the first time we ever see this iconic species having sex, it's two males.
Yeah, well, okay. Moving on to octopus sex, I thought it was rather odd.
Let's do that.
That you would eat your partner right after having sex.
A bit too creative for me.
Yeah, but apparently it's not always unusual, or it's not unusual at all. And the male in this one case did something to prevent it. What happened?
Oh my gosh. Well, I mean, I'm kind of calling this the case of the Bill Cosby octopus because this is actually, this is a blue-lined octopus, which is one species of the blue-ringed octopus. This is one of the most venomous species of any creature on the planet. Their venom is something like 1,000 times more powerful than cyanide, and the amount that fit on the head of a pin could kill an adult human. In their bodies, they have enough to kill 26 people within minutes. So this is very, very, very venomous animal. So the males have a big problem in that many species of octopus, the first date is a dinner date, quite literally, and the female might eat the male. In fact, at the Seattle Aquarium, they used to have this thing called octopus blind date, and they would let two octopuses of opposite sex meet each other on February 14, and they would mate. Except they stopped because sometimes one would eat the other one. So it's very common. So what does this one species, the blue-lined octopus, do to prevent his mate from eating him? And he's got a particularly bad problem because she is like 5 times bigger than he is. And he has really short arms. And his hectocotylus, which is the specialized arm that he uses to take his spermatophore and put it in her mantle. Aristotle described octopus sex as he takes his penis and puts it in her nostril, which is kind of correct. Doesn't sound very romantic, but he has to get close enough to her to stick this thing in her mantle. So how do you do it? He drugs her. He drugs her by biting her aorta.
Aorta?
Yes.
Yeah. Wow.
And he injects just enough of this toxic venom to which other blue-ringed octopuses are largely immune but not impervious, just enough so that he doesn't kill her, but she's paralyzed and doesn't breathe and can't get away for about an hour.
Wow.
Thus the Bill Cosby reference of a couple minutes ago. And by the way, did I read correctly? These octopuses, which obviously is the proper plural if you use it, they're tiny. They're like 2 inches, or the male is 2 inches.
The size of a golf ball.
Even the
males
female
are really little.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Where are these? Where in the world are these blue? Whatever
they live in Australia in shallow, like tide pools and stuff like this. And the thing is, the bite often doesn't hurt, but there's no antidote to the poison. So those of you who are visiting, like the shallow regions of Australia and see this beautiful animal, do not pick him up because of the bad thing. But the thing about male octopuses, they have developed so many weird ways of getting away with having sex with someone who might eat them. And this is just one of them.
What else?
Some males, they actually break off their specialized hectocotylus arm, which is like essentially having your penis break off in your mate. Others have a really long arm, and they actually stay at home in their den and set up shop next to another female so that they can sneak their arm out of their den and into the female without even leaving home.
Oh, wow.
But there are other octopuses, as you can see, I just can't stand talking about octopuses.
Apparently not. Yeah, go ahead.
But there's other octopuses like the larger Pacific striped octopus who mate beak to beak, face to face, sucker to sucker, and actually will guard their mates and will stay in the same den together. So there's all different ways of doing it if you're an octopus, and all different species. There's hundreds of species of octopuses, and we're just finding new stuff out about them all the time.
Okay, the book.
Never fail to
Soul
shock
of an
us.
Octopus,
Soul
one of
of
the
an
greatest books
Octopus.
ever, written by Cy Montgomery.
The octopus with which you had a relationship with at the aquarium, what kind of octopus was that?
That was a giant Pacific octopus.
Okay, giant one.
And they're also the same one that they used to have the octopus blind date at the New England Aquarium.
Okay.
By the way, people haven't read that book. Your
It's a great
relationship with
book.
that octopus, both physical and is just, it's otherworldly incredible. We're talking to Cy Montgomery. Soul of an Octopus is the name of the book.
You know, a few minutes ago, we were talking to a professor from Brown University who's gotten this great book. What's the name of the book, Jim? I don't know.
Why Nothing Works.
Why Nothing Works. It's talking about how we can't seem to build infrastructure or EV chargers or anything in the United States anymore. That's why I was particularly excited to hear about these beavers in Czechoslovakia who had the same problem. I guess the Czechs can't build anything either. And the beavers took things into their own hands, or I guess they don't have hands, paws,
they
whatever.
kind of do. They're quite dexterous.
Okay. So tell us about the Czech beavers.
Oh, I love this story too. So the Czech Republic had a plan to build a dam on a river south of Prague. And the reason they were building it was there was this military encampment with like pollution and sediment that was slopping into the river, and it was like polluting the nearby areas, and they were going to put up this dam. But I think it was actually in negotiations for 7 years, and nothing was happening. And then one day they woke up and found that beavers built the dam, and the problem disappeared practically overnight. This beautiful wetland formed, and as a result, they've created a sanctuary for all of these animals that is, I think, like twice as large as the area the humans had planned. So the beavers not only got it done, but they got it done better. And we know that beavers are these fantastic ecological architects. There's lots of places in the US and Europe where beavers have transformed the whole land to suddenly harbor all kinds of endangered species that were gone before. They've turned like deserts into wetlands. And in Europe, people are so eager to have beavers working for them that there's even this illegal movement called beaver bombing, in which they parachute beavers out of airplanes into areas where people think that you need it. You just need a beaver. You need the beavers there. And the beavers get to work, and they like build these spectacular wetlands.
So they parachute them down, and I presume the beavers chew the ropes off when they land and then run away? How do they chew? They're in their little vest. What do they do with the little vest?
That is a very good question.
I don't think so. Go ahead.
They would do a good job getting out of that. A lot of animals managed to get out of their harnesses and their radio collars and things like that. But that is a very good question. I should look that up and see how do they get out of those.
Okay.
I can hardly take off my sweater.
Cy Montgomery, I have become modestly, and I mean modestly, more ethical in terms of what I eat, because one of my favorite foods, I hate to say it, I can't even look at her, used to be octopus. I never would touch octopus again because of you and your book. But
you
unfortunately,
love oysters.
I don't go far. Well, I don't go far enough. And then I read the story, and I try to eat more fish Not only because it's healthier, I do eat more fish, I don't try. Not only healthier because I consider it to be more ethical, I guess. I do. And then I read this story, the title of which in The Guardian, Wild Fish Can Tell Humans Apart When They Dress Differently, a study finds. You'll describe that, but let me go to the end of it before you tell the story. And when I read it, I say, these fish really get it. I mean, I don't know if they're thinking in a traditional sense, but their some skills are such that you say, how can you eat that thing too? So hopefully it has a positive impact on my mostly unethical eating behavior. But tell the story. How do they know that? Well, tell the story.
Yeah, I love the story, but it kind of was like, duh. The conclusion is, fish recognize humans, which is kind of like saying women can count, Of course they recognize humans.
To you it is, yeah.
And anyone who has kept fish knows this. And there are people who have kept fish, koi in particular, because they can live for decades and decades, that will swim into their owner's hand to cuddle. There is this guy out in Wisconsin who's made friends with a smallmouth bass he names Elvis, and he goes snorkeling in the lake, and he calls this fish with a series of flicks, and the fish will come right up to him and follow him around. So what's interesting about this study to me is this was done by researchers at the Max Planck Institute in Germany. They did 2 species of sea bream, which when you look it up, what do you get? You get recipes. But
that's horrible.
I know, I was horrified. But how do they recognize us? And these 2 species of sea bream recognize us underwater the exact same way I recognize my dive buddies when I go scuba diving.
Wow.
And that is by what they're wearing. So I know that, my friend Deb has got these pink patches on her wetsuit, and I know that Michelle has got the short fins. And that's the kind of thing that the fish are looking at. And they tested this, teaching fish first, follow me, I'm going to give you some food. Then they put another person in the water who had a different outfit on, different colors, and the fish didn't recognize that person or follow that person. Then they both had them wear identical dive suits and identical fins, and the fish couldn't tell them apart. Well, we're exactly the same. They did 30 trials of this, and they used video recordings to make sure that they were, correctly counting the number of fish following each diver. And the fact that they care about us, said the researcher, means maybe we should care about them.
Well, that was my takeaway. Can you go back to the koi?
Salmon, Jim.
I know. Listen, can you go back to the koi for a second? Is that literally a koi? That's like a big goldfish, right? Is that what a koi is?
Yeah, it's a big goldfish.
Okay. Well, not all of them, obviously, will swim into the hand of a human who it knows? Does it need to know? And to be held, just to be held.
Yes, which is amazing, because you would think it would mess up their slime coat and that they wouldn't like it. But some of them seem to like it. And it may be because they know that we like it. I don't know, but I've seen this happen. People form deep attachments with some of the fish who they know. And the fish are watching you. Even if you don't recognize them and all your fish look alike, they do recognize you. And you're different from someone else who comes into the room. And it makes sense, because if your school, if your life is, a life with a group of others, it makes sense to be able to recognize who's who, especially, if it's a 150-pound human who might be bringing you food or might eat you.
Obviously an octopus is a much more evolved creature than some of these fish, but we mention it so often, and I hope people will go buy the book if they haven't read it already. Can you spend the last minute or two briefly describing your relationship that is the centerpiece of Soul of an Octopus for those who will read it but haven't yet?
Oh, I'm honored to do that. I I had this wonderful friend. I knew several octopuses pretty well, but the one I knew best, I spent 2 years getting to know her, coming every week, sometimes more often, to New England Aquarium, and she was a giant Pacific octopus named Octavia.
Mm-hmm.
And at first she didn't want to have anything to do with me, but I persisted. She ended up grabbing me just to investigate me. I never felt that she was being aggressive. But I know that she looked forward to seeing me. I was surprised by this. But I know it because you would open the tank, she would turn bright red with excitement. Oh, she would flow over to meet you, and then her arms would come up reaching for you out of the water, suckers first. And then she would pour her suckers over my skin, and they are tasting you as well as feeling you. She did not behave towards other people that way who she did not know. And sometimes she didn't like new visitors. There were some visitors who she would squirt them in the face with freezing cold salt water before jetting away. But with me, she knew something interesting and fun was going to happen. She was going to get some delicious fish. We were going to have a meal together. Or there was going to be an exchange of gentle touch. They like gentle touch just like we do. Or we would play with something together. So, we had what feels very much to me like a friendship, despite the fact that we were separated by 500 million years of evolution.
Well, the book has a beautiful
Yes.
retelling. The book is beautiful and important, and you're pretty good yourself, Cy Montgomery. It's great to see you, as always. Thanks so much for your time.
Yeah, thank you, Cy.
Oh, thank you.
We have been speaking with
unbelievable.
naturalist author Cy Montgomery. Her latest book of many is What the Chicken Knows, A New Appreciation of the World's Most Familiar Bird, which is terrific. But the book about the octopus, soul
just
of an
incredible.
octopus, is just, it will knock your socks off.
Don't you feel, I've said this before, I've said this to Cy, don't you feel these interspecies relationships that she builds is inspirational, is uplifting,
That's right.
is something of anything?
That's right. Think about if you're
here we go.
lonesome, you could just kind of go to the aquarium and
find an octopus. Well, she did, though. I mean, she
did.
said she felt like they were friends.
She did, and it was great.
It's totally beautiful.
Up next, we're going to open the lines and talk about doggy bags, talking about going from sublime to the not so sublime. Americans historically have loved restaurant portions so big that you can take the rest home and subsist on the same meal all week long. But the times, they are a-changin'. Are you still taking your leftovers to go? Or are you leaving that one chicken finger on the plate? And what about being able to get takeout so easily has changed things? Or the pandemic? Call or text next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
In 2022, the Chinese government told NPR's Emily Feng she was no longer welcome in China, where she had lived and reported for 7 years. Even so, she says she hasn't lost claim to her Chinese identity.
Being Chinese is not confined to the boundaries of the People's Republic of China.
I'm Elsa Chang. My conversation with NPR's Emily Feng on her new book, Let Only Red Flowers Bloom, on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you.
And Lawrence General Hospital, now united with Holy Family Hospital to help build a robust regional healthcare system defined by a shared commitment to patient-centered care and medical excellence. More at lawrencegeneral.org. And Advocates, the human services provider helping individuals facing mental health, substance use, and other life challenges, is now hiring clinicians. Learn more about their supportive culture and open positions at advocates.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Marjorie can attest to the fact we get a lot of emails where people say, Jim, you have no idea what you were talking about, which unfortunately occasionally is true. Today, I know everything about the next topic. There is no greater joy than you go to a nice restaurant, you stuff yourself on some delicious meal. I know you're not supposed to say stuff yourself. You eat a delicious meal, and then you still have some leftovers ready to eat the next day. But apparently not everyone agrees with my view of the world. One restaurateur who was profiled in the New York Times says he's noticed a change in diner behavior, fewer doggy bags requested at the end of a meal. Now, for some, apparently it's a matter of principle. Leftovers are just inherently less good. I completely disagree, but moving on. For others, it's a matter of logistics, Marjorie. For example, if you're on a date, heading to a bar after the meal, do you really want to carry 2 pizza slices around with you for the rest of the night? To which my answer is, of course you do. Put it in the frunk of your car and eat it 2 hours later when you're coming out of the bar and eat a little snack. So is this just the latest Ozempic-fueled externality, or is there something psychological going on with our dining habits? The doggy bag and you, the number to call is 877-301-8970. You are clearly pro-doggy bag.
Well, I am, except that most of the time they give you these plastic containers that you can't recycle, so I feel really bad about that.
So you don't take the food?
No, I do take it, but I feel bad about it because you can't recycle them. So I try to clean them and save them. But the thing is, you get such huge portions, so you figure if you're going to go out and you really like something. We were talking before about spaghetti carbonara. I love spaghetti carbonara. But spaghetti carbonara is really rich and really filling. I know I'm never going to eat the whole thing. So I know I want to take the rest of it home, and you can eat it, for 2 more days. So yeah, I'm big. I always take stuff home. We went to a dinner a couple of weeks ago. I took stuff home.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why anybody does. By the way, the average, in this story in the New York Times, this number is stunning me. The average American leaves 53 pounds of food that they have ordered at a restaurant. I don't understand how that can be real. That's a pound a week for the average person, which obviously means some people are leaving much more. My attitude to this, let me be honest, there will not be a grain of rice left on the table when I lead a one of those great stories we read this morning, I don't know where it was, is a woman was really embarrassed, a grown daughter, that her mother, there was a piece of bread left on the table.
Yeah.
They all agreed the bread was great, and the mother wanted to take it, and the daughter discourages her, and the mother took it anyway. And the answer is, why would you not? Because you're embarrassed?
I guess
because
so.
you're taking would you take a single piece? You love bread.
I do love bread.
If there was a single piece of focaccia, for example,
I love
which we had.
focaccia.
Okay, would you take that?
I might take that.
But you might not.
Well, you see, the thing is, you have to have something. If you had, like you talk about putting aluminum foil in your pockets when you go to a buffet or something like that. This woman was in one of these stores. She had a Ziploc bag. If you brought your Ziploc bag with you, I guess, and you could put it in there. But I feel a little ridiculous getting a plastic box which you can't recycle for a piece of bread.
What's wrong with bringing a Ziploc bag or a little
That's what
aluminum
I said.
foil?
If I brought,
so bring it. Why would you not bring it?
Because I don't always think ahead and bring the Ziploc bag home.
And while you're at it, you not only bring the food, you take a knife or two, which we discussed last week. So we want to know what your behavior is around doggy bags, and if your behavior has changed. Do you remember when we were younger?
Picture of what you take when you go out to eat.
I know, but they can't see
yeah,
it. So
that's too bad.
So
the
next
vacuum from the Teletubbies.
Do you remember in the old days when I don't know if doggy bags were a new phenomenon like 30 years ago or something, but I remember generally most people I ate out with, you lied and said you were taking it home for your dog or your kid.
Well, that's why they call it doggy bag, Jim. Take it home for the dog.
But nobody, I don't understand the line. You paid for the meal. You obviously enjoyed it enough that you want to continue eating it.
Yep.
And you shove it in something, hopefully not a plastic container that's not recyclable, and you take it home. End of discussion. What are you laughing about?
I'm thinking about when I was waiting tables, the former bishop of Fall River, I used to work at this restaurant in Hyannis down the Cape in the summer, would come in for dinner, and he'd drink a lot. And then he'd ask me to put a bunch of ice cream in a doggy bag to take home in July for the nuns that worked back at the house where he lived. Now, how long is ice cream in a doggy bag in July going to last?
Till he got to the car.
And that's what he thought of the nuns. He brought home this soppy thing full of wet, melted ice cream.
I would say it didn't make it home.
I would say, okay.
877-301-8970. Paula from Hingham texts and says, go ahead, you read it.
My mother is listening, so she knows this is true. Whenever we go out, she will take every bit of unused butter,
your mother.
put it in a plastic baggie in her purse, and take it home. Oh, my God. Listen to the next one. Growing up, I didn't know sugar could be purchased. I only thought it came from Dunkin' Donuts.
Well, that is not really a doggy bag kind of thing.
And the pizza thing behind your Tesla?
It's a long story.
One of our coworkers here says at BPR we don't use the frunk. We put takeout pizza boxes on the street behind Jim's Tesla wheel. What was that about?
It's a long story. 877-301-8970.
Did you run it over?
It's a long story. 877-3. And by the way, the one exception I would say for some people, even though I would not have made an exception decades ago, apparently if you're on a date, it is low. It is crappy.
No, that's all.
Because if that's who you are, that's who you are.
Especially if you're like on a first date, you're going to go out for dinner, you're going to take half the stuff home in a doggy bag. And that kind of says,
and you know what you do to your date?
That's the end of the date. See you later.
You know what you say
home.
to the date?
What?
Are you going to eat that? And when he or she or they say no, you take theirs. By the way, that's another thing. Can we talk about this before we get to the calls? Do you have any problem? If you're out with friends, I'm not saying like strangers.
Yep.
You're out with friends. One of your friends ate something fabulous that you didn't order. They don't finish it. The friend says, the server says, do you want to take that with you, ma'am? She says no. Do you say, is it okay if I take it with her?
No, I do not say that.
I do.
Jim.
Why would you not?
Because someone else has had their food and their fork and their chopsticks.
You often eat out of my crap here.
I never eat out of your crap.
Of course you do.
You're the one that eats out of mine.
Oh, it's me. It is me. And actually, it's me eating out of your stuff. I forgot.
Yeah. Okay, 877-301-8970. What do you think about this? I also think people
It's also good for the environment. You're
it's
the
very good for the environment. That's right. It's
you
good
don't
for
want
the environment.
food waste.
But, you know, it also depends what you're eating. It's one of these people says, you know, if you're having a meatball sub or a chicken parm, you know, you may not want to take that if you are not driving. You have to be driving because otherwise, what are you going to do? Go from the restaurant to a nightclub or something and bring your chicken parm? I don't think so.
Well, let me say,
or get on the subway.
Can I say one
with
more
your
thing
chicken
about
parm?
that? When we bring food to work, you know what you read? You read a website, and the website says you should only have X kind of food out, not in the refrigerator for an hour. How long back in Brighton do we have food out before we eat it some days?
A long time.
A long time. Are you dying? Are you well? Are you okay?
Even milk.
Okay, exactly. So the answer is you go to the bar, you leave it in the car, you take it home, you eat it the next day.
Okay, 877-301-8970. Let's go to Ryan and Melrose. What do you think, Ryan?
Hello, Ryan.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
Calling in is I think that, usually my husband, he'll set aside half of his meal with a lot of self-control.
I love this.
And then he'll say, well, this is what I'm taking home with me. Whereas I'm, I think a little more like Marjorie, how you were saying you feel a little guilty about the waste. And then I get to that point of like no return, and then it's like, oh, I'll just eat this one more thing, even though I'm getting fuller and fuller. So I definitely can relate to that.
But Ryan, I understand your embarrassment, but you're living in a situation where your husband gets 2 bites of the proverbial apple, literally or figuratively. He gets to enjoy what you enjoy at a restaurant, and the next day he gets to enjoy, or late at night he gets to enjoy it again. That doesn't have an appeal to you?
It does sometimes. There's certain places. I'll give a shout out to like a place we like to go in Melrose called Giacomo's. Their meals, they just give you such huge portions, so you have to, set aside some for the next day lunch, which is always so nice. The next day when you heat it up, and
exactly,
it's so good. Yeah.
You wake up, you look in the refrigerator, you see this beautiful thing you could not have made, and it's free, by the way, because you already paid for it. So I would emulate your husband a little bit more, Ryan, and I think you'll be a happier person. Thank you for the call.
We have a few texts.
What are they saying?
Gary in Wisconsin says, my wife doesn't eat leftovers, so when we go out, I get 2 doggy bags. Life is good. She's a keeper. And then we have Buster. Ooh, Buster is saying no to doggy bags. It's one step away from getting your teeth cleaned and asking the hygienist to pack up. Ooh, my goodness, that's gross.
What she plucked out of your teeth?
What she plucked out of your teeth.
You've never done that?
No, no.
Now, in all seriousness,
that
is the most ridiculous comparison I have ever heard in my life, Marjorie.
Yeah, that's bad.
It's ridiculous.
I don't know why. I shouldn't have read that, Buster. That was kind of gross. But anyway, it's too late now. Let's go to Sarah in Worcester. Hi,
Hello, Sarah.
Hi, first time, long time.
Love that.
I just wanted to comment that I think it depends on who you're going out with.
Yeah.
Because I've gone out for corporate dinners over the past 18 years.
Yeah.
And it's always been taboo to take leftovers at those dinners.
How do you know it's... Wait. How do you know it's... they give you a look.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, you have to kind of be friendly with the people you're out with to do it, Sarah, I think, right?
Yeah, but even like I work with these people, they're my team, but there's still always someone that'll give you that look. Like, what are you doing?
Well, Sarah, be your own person. Do you want to take the stuff or do you not want to take the stuff?
Also, if you're out at a corporate dinner with your boss and they're paying for the meal, Isn't it weird to be taking home the leftovers? I think so.
No, it is not. Sarah, how close are you to
Yes.
saying, I don't give a damn what they think. I want that food. I'm taking it home.
I think it depends on the food.
Exactly. If it's really good, how close are you?
Yeah, I'm taking it.
Exactly. We got there. Thank you, Sarah.
Listen.
Thanks. Excellent first call. Do another one soon, please.
Listen to this one. I was talking about the difficulty of, taking the doggy bag if you're at a restaurant and you're going out afterwards. Kara says she does take the doggy bag and hides it in the bushes outside the club. Then at 1 a.m. I have a tasty snack while I find my way home. Only once rats ate it before I came back.
Yeah, okay, and that was one time, so everything else worked out just fine. I have to say, one of the things I'm good at
Oh
is,
my God! Imagine if you came back and the rats had gone into your doggy
So you
bag.
don't eat it. I mean,
no,
you don't
I
eat
think
it.
you do
Move
not.
on.
I don't think you want to touch it either.
I want to repeat something here.
Uh-huh.
I started to say, I understand. I'm fairly good at understanding people, even those who disagree with me. I don't understand this at all, other than the guilt thing, which that one was just describing. I don't understand it from any perspective. From a fun perspective, from an economic perspective, from an environmental perspective. Doggy bags are who we are.
Okay. Well, they may be who you are, Jim.
Listen to
this
this
one, though. This lady's up your alley.
What's that?
She says she often goes out to dinner with her buffet bag, which may have a baggie inside.
Exactly.
That's Marion Wells.
You do what you got to do.
Several baggies inside.
By the way, let's go to, you know what they do here? You know what the containers are here? They're not those plastic things. Newsfeed Cafe. Paper,
They're not.
cartons,
that is right. And you feel much less guilty
safe.
about those.
So
Absolutely.
take one of those with you to dinner.
Okay. Plastic lined pockets, someone suggests, instead of aluminum foil lined pockets, Jim,
I've done
for you.
that.
Let's go to Sue in Arlington. Hi, Sue.
Hello, Sue.
Hi. I believe this is my first time calling.
Wow.
I have always taken home extra food.
Excellent.
I have a very small appetite now,
Mm-hmm.
so I tend to get 2 or 3 meals out of one thing.
Yeah.
I keep my own containers in the car because I have so many
I
takeout
love this.
containers.
Love it.
So I don't always remember to bring them in.
Mm-hmm.
If I know I'm not coming home right away, I bring an insulated bag with ice packs.
Oh,
wow, you are really planning ahead, Sue.
You're a fabulous woman, Sue. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, and many years ago, my husband and I ate in Chinatown in Boston
Yeah.
prior to seeing a play at one of the theaters.
Yeah, that's an
And
issue.
we had a takeout bag under our seats that you could smell during the play.
That's fabulous.
So I've avoided that in the
You must be proud.
in the future.
You know what you can do? Admittedly, if you take the tea, it's a problem. I've always, Marjorie's going to say this is ridiculous. When I'm in that circle, I plan. I bring a cooler. No, I'm serious. You put the cooler in the back seat of the car. You go out of your way a block. You put the food in this cooler and you eat it the next day. Sue, not only was it a great first call, I'm really proud of you for preparing like you do. Call us again anytime. Sue, thanks for the call.
We have several texters who say they bring their own containers. One of them brings a container to take home salsa.
I like salsa, but it's good.
Would you put salsa in a container to take home?
Look at me when I say this. Yes, I would do that. The answer is if it's good, of course I would. I don't even understand it. Anonymous says Weight Watchers used to encourage people to get the to-go container as soon as the food arrives. It's actually brilliant. You pack half the meal away right away because portions are far too big in this country. That's me talking, not the texter. It encourages you to eat less and have another meal later on. Marjorie apparently doesn't understand that. Anonymous texter.
No, that's very nice.
By the way, you know what I realize you do? I just realized this for the first time. When we are out at meals, like we're the friend the other day, you often tell the server, I assume it's because you're embarrassed, you say loudly enough for the server to hear, Jim, I'll bring this in tomorrow and you can eat it. Is that to assuage your guilt because you're taking it for you?
No, but I don't know why I said that, but often I do that, Jim, and you seem to appreciate it. This is an anonymous texter. This is what happens to me. I eat until I feel like I'm going to explode, and then I don't take the leftovers. The next day, I always regret it.
Exactly. Who wrote this note? You think the food makes it home, he eats it in the car. I often do. You wrote that? Jamie wrote it. Is there anything better? You're on your way home from a meal, and you realize how great it was, and you realize you didn't eat enough, and you just pull over, and you down some of that. What did you talk about? Carbonara or whatever it is you
spaghetti
like.
carbonara. Yeah, it's like heavy cream and bacon and
really
stuff
good
like that.
for you too. Yeah.
We have some little sound. This is Larry David. You know him from
I've
Curb
heard
Your
of him, yeah.
Enthusiasm.
I know
Paulie
he is.
Walnuts. He was on The Sopranos.
He was.
So whether you are Larry David or Paulie Walnuts on The Sopranos, the topic of who gets to eat the leftovers can be contentious. Our staff compiled a little sound. Here it is.
These Barker House rolls, they belong to my mom.
They do not. They were for the tape.
Wrap these up, will you? Cellophane.
I told her you wouldn't mind me having some.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah.
Did you know that you stole my leftovers?
Yes, I did.
You did. What do you get? 10% of my salary, 10% of my food? Is that it?
Stop it. Stop.
Huh?
You can see Larry David and the leftovers. That could be a whole show.
How about rolls, though? We talked about this before, and you gave indirect answers. You like bread as much as anybody I've ever known
I like
in my
bread.
life.
Yep.
What is the difference between a roll and the carbonara? when
Well,
you're
I mean,
leaving?
if you had a bunch, if you had a baguette or something like that, maybe you take that home. But generally speaking, bread gets stale really quickly.
How many restaurants do you go to and say, "I'll have a baguette"?
Well, if you have a baguette with your Italian meal, lots of times
Like a whole baguette?
Yes, lots of places don't give you bread anymore, which is very distressing.
I hate that. Don't you
or
hate
you have
that?
to pay for it.
I don't like that.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
And if you have to pay for it, do you take it 100%? Thank you.
I don't know.
Okay.
Pam from Orange, thank you for calling.
By the way, before you go to Pam from Orange, it's a really good question I'd like you to answer. It was directed to me. Would you take the food home, Jim, from Magoni's?
Yeah, Jim has given a very hard time to Magoni's, which is
it was
a
great.
legendary restaurant.
It is. Is it still
It's not
open?
actually in Fall River. It's across the
Still
river
open
in
or not?
Somerset. Well, they're redoing it, actually.
Oh,
it has
very
been
nice.
it has been sold and is being redone. And a lot of my family went to the last night the Magoni's
Oh,
was
how was
operating.
that?
They had a great time. They were there till 2 o'clock in the morning. They're going to have a roof deck. So when the Magoni's reopens, I'm very excited about going and having a cocktail on the roof deck.
Why don't you tell them what they gave out the closing night, which was actually, even for me,
Okay, here
moving.
we go.
What did they give out?
You're going to say cans of tomato sauce.
They gave out can openers because the same can openers
Not
that you would
true.
open the Chef
Yeah,
Boyardee
okay.
with at the restaurant.
Yeah, you were there like 25
and heated
years
up
ago.
on a Bunsen burner.
They improved.
Right at the table.
How do you feel about doggy bags is the question we're asking you. 877-301-8970. Apparently there's been a decrease in the number of people who are asking
I
for
don't get
doggy
it.
bags, whether it's because young people are used to ordering everything out from DoorDash or wherever, and they don't think it's a big deal to bring home and leave stuff in the refrigerator, or because they're out on dates and they don't want to be, seem like that seems tacky to do when you're
I
on,
think it's
especially on a
tacky.
first date with someone, or do you just shove it all in there into your aluminum foil lined pockets
Yes.
or your cellophane lined pockets, or do you bring your own little baggies with you to the restaurant?
You should.
Where are you in the doggy bag issue? It's Pam from Orange. Thank you for calling.
Hey, Pam. Hello there.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie. How are you?
Hello,
Fine,
Pam.
thanks.
We're good. Thank you.
Good. Hey, so I feel so guilty for having asked for a doggy bag and then forgotten it so many times.
Yes.
Horrible.
That now I just leave. I will, if I haven't brought some container, I will not take the leftovers with me. And I had a question about the results of the survey. I'm wondering, is it possible that people are taking fewer leftovers because restaurants have been serving smaller portions, maybe since the pandemic? I don't know. I will hang up and listen for the answer.
Well, that actually is. What's your response to that?
Well, I don't know, because they're talking in this story about how people take home a lot of food from places like the Cheesecake Factory, where they serve large portions, or Texas Roadhouse. Red Lobster, of course, used to have the unlimited shrimp offer until it bankrupted the company and they had to change it. No longer, but
I think Nicole is right. Portions are, unless you're going to, what's that factory called? Cheesecake Factory. Portions are generally smaller unless you find the right restaurant.
But they do give you a lot of bread at all those places before the meal, and lots of people really go there because they love the bread. It's like going over to Tiffany Faison's place that has all the great biscuits in the Fenway. I mean, oh God, those biscuits are great.
Sweet Cheeks.
Yes.
Okay, so we just got a photograph from a friend of ours whose name we can't mention for reasons we can't tell you. And she writes, at Los Andes, you got this too. At Los Andes restaurant in Providence, a beautiful steak, this is the photograph of her and the steak, en route to see Mike Birbiglia, who's been on the show. His family lives on the Cape. Listen to what she did. She had a baggie in the car ready for the steak.
Oh, my God.
So she asked for a cup of ice from the restaurant so she could make an instant cooler in the car. Is that one of the most touching stories you've ever heard?
That is a great story. There
Isn't
she
that
is,
great?
a picture of her with the ice and the steak, putting it in the trunk, and look at how beautiful she looks.
And what do you think of her, by the way? You like her?
She's one of my favorite people
I know
in the
she
world.
is. So what is the problem? She said, I love the steak. I need a container. I'm going to a show. Give me some ice.
Anything she does is
It's
fine with me. That's absolutely right.
Let's go
Okay.
to Lori in South Boston. We're talking doggy bags on Boston Public Radio. Hi, Lori.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
I'm in the car.
Yes, we can.
I'm in the car.
I know you are.
Okay. I love doggy bags. I've always taken doggy bags wherever, and I often bring plastic bags with me in order to take things home to avoid those extra plastic containers.
Yeah.
But I was in France many years ago, and we were a big group of people. And my sister had a lot of food left over, and so did some other people. So we tried to explain the concept of a doggy bag. Well, the waiter was so enthusiastic, he put everybody's bones in the doggy bag with the good leftover food.
That's a pretty good story.
So it was absolutely hysterical. When we got back to the hotel, all the food was ruined because we had bones in there.
Well, that is a beautiful and sad story all at the same time, Laura. I thought you were going to say, because French servers are pretty intimidating. At least that's been I thought you were going to say you didn't have the courage to ask them. When you did, they looked down their nose at you. But obviously, this person totally got into it just in the wrong way. Lori, thanks for the call. We appreciate it. 877-301-8970.
When I would chaperone seniors to New York City to see a show, we'd stop at a restaurant before the show, and everyone was told, you can't take leftovers into the theater. Don't worry, you'll get to eat again.
Oh.
That seems a little strange. You stop and you're going to go to a show and you take the leftovers with you. Although that woman just said she had the Chinese food under her seat at the show. So I
Well,
guess
there's
people
certain
do
food,
it.
but you know what you do? You don't plan enough in life.
Uh-huh.
If you're going to do that, you obviously get a food that's not going to stink if it sits under your seat for a decent amount of time. But that does require a decent amount of planning. So
Now, Sarah has a different idea
What
about
is it?
going out for a corporate dinner with
What's
your
that?
boss, your coworker. She said to take the food in a doggy bag, tells your boss, this is a good employee. They're not going to waste supplies. They're going to
brilliant. That's
utilize
brilliant.
everything to its maximum. That's a different perspective.
I like that.
Christine in New Hampshire, what do you
Hello,
think?
Christine.
Hi.
Hi.
I was just calling because, well, I've always taken home doggy bags, and
Good.
going out to eat with my kids, they would always leave like half a steak on their plate,
Yeah,
and
that-
I would take their stuff home. But now that they have a child and own a house, they bring home their doggy bags from every dinner out. So they finally learn, not to waste that money.
That's
and send
right.
That food back. You can make steak and eggs. You can make a cheese steak. You can make even reheat eggs from an omelet.
Well, that's a beautiful story. That
It is a
actually,
beautiful
and
story.
obviously a tradition passed down from mother to children, which we love to hear. Thank you, Christine, very much for your call.
Annie from New Bedford says, whenever my partner and I go out with my family, they call us the disposal and the drain. He finishes all the food, and I finish all the drinks. That's a good one. Oh, here's a good one, because I think this is so true. Growing up, my mom always taught me there were starving children in Africa or China or wherever. I need to finish my food, so now I just have that ingrained in me, and I feel bad if I leave leftovers to go to the trash.
Yeah.
And a lot of people point out
should
that
feel
the restaurant ends up throwing out the food that you haven't eaten.
Which is
because-
horrible for
yeah.
the environment.
Mhm.
You have anything
Okay.
else to say?
No, I don't. Are we
Let's
done?
take one more call.
Oh, my goodness.
We
We're
only
not
have time
done
for
yet.
one
Okay.
call.
All right.
Dana in Arlington. Hi, you got
There's
a minute.
no Jared today, you know.
I know that because you
Okay.
asked
Hi,
them all
I'm
the
just-
questions earlier, so we're fine. Hi, Dana.
I'm thinking about the old tradition with Buddhist monks who would take a begging bowl with them everywhere in their one bag and fill it up with whoever would give them anything. I think it's a great tradition, and I think the modern begging bowl needs to have a lid, and we can all take one with us all the time in our one bag, and if we're lucky enough to go to a restaurant, bonus.
I like
Bonus food.
It is bonus food. I think it's an excellent point, Dana. You said it beautifully. Thank you very much for the call. What would you say the consensus is here?
Well, this is what a local radio weather guy said, according to a texter.
Yeah.
He left his leftovers next to a dumpster, went to a Celtics game, and took the leftovers back from next to the dumpster.
Did they explain why he left them next to a dumpster?
Because he had to go to Boston Garden.
Why would you leave it next to a dumpster?
I don't know. That's
Wow.
pretty daring.
That is one of the most interesting stories I've ever heard.
Well, think about the rats. That's the thing. Why would you do that?
How come you're not curious enough that why would you leave it there? You wouldn't leave it next to a dumpster, obviously.
Well, that's why the person sent the text, because they were so shocked that this local, I wonder which person it was.
You know what you can also do?
Local weather guy?
Okay,
Who do you
fine.
think, Jim?
I have no idea. So you know what you can also do? You ever think of the idea, by the way, most restaurants want to serve you in a way that you want to be served.
Mhm.
You ever think of leaving the bag at the restaurant and saying, I'll come back after the show? How about that?
Have you ever done that?
Of course I have done that. I'm serious.
I don't believe
understand the hesitancy.
You're telling so many stories today.
Well, maybe
You're
I
making
made that
stuff
one.
up.
I made that one up. But the others I didn't make up.
Oh, is that right?
Yeah.
Okay, we are done. Thank
We're
you very
done.
much for
Thank
listening
you.
to another edition of Boston Public
Yes.
Radio. Thanks to everybody who came down to the
Thank
show.
you
at
all.
the
We
Boston Public
appreciate it.
Library. We very appreciate it very much. You can keep up with us 24/7.
What's